Chapter 1319. A Ruler's Domain. Chapter 1319. Just this background alone was enough to be mentioned in the same breath as the disciples of the top clans. Yi Zichen hadn't expected his background to be so impressive. When he heard the news, he was no different from the others. No wonder his mother was best friends with someone as important as Xianji. So she was the Lord of 7 Stars. After living for so long, he finally had a chance to return to being a disciple of a noble family. Yi Zichen couldn't help but feel helpless, but also a little excited. Could he be his silk pants in the future too? He could beat up anyone he didn't like. If anything happened, Xianji's mother would back him up. I told you, someone as handsome as me can be the main character anywhere. Yi Zichen rubbed his chin and grinned foolishly. How could Xianji not see through his little schemes? She knocked him on the head. She didn't hit him particularly hard, but it was enough to wake Yi Zichen from his reverie. When Yi Zichen looked up, he saw Xianji glare at him threateningly. Instantly, his silly grin vanished. Xianji hadn't said all this, so Yi Zichen could point at her and her mother and act arrogantly. She'd done it purely to instill some fear in the hearts of the people here. Even if they went back and told their superiors, they'd have to think twice before attacking. Were they really prepared to face the wrath of the profound pavilion and society of saints? Looking at the expressions of the people around her, Xianji knew that the deterrence she wanted to display was enough. She smiled and stood beside Yi Zichen, then narrowed her eyes at Sha Ke. Just now, Xianji had revealed Yi Zichen's background like a cannonball. Sha Ke was dumbfounded. In his eyes, Yi Zichen's cultivation was shallow, but the profound pavilion and society of saints stood behind him. Even Sha Ke feared them, especially the Society of Saints. It was an organization that ruled over the stars. Every single one of them had the potential to become a saint. Not to mention him, even a demon emperor would have to think twice before making a move against such a colossus. It seemed that snatching the Xinyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda from Yi Zichen's hands wouldn't be as easy as he'd imagined. Perhaps the demon emperor had long since predicted this would happen. He'd sent Sha Ke here because he knew he wouldn't dare attack Xianji. That way, he wouldn't provoke the profound pavilion, and he'd confirm Yi Zichen's backer. The demon emperor is indeed the demon emperor. His calculations are really deep. These demon gods were all proud and arrogant. Even in the face of the demon overlord, they might not be able to achieve absolute obedience. Each of them believed that they had the possibility of replacing the demon overlord. However, from what Sha Ke could tell, the demon emperor was indeed a schemer. Perhaps only a few old fellows among the demon gods could compare to him. Sha Ke subconsciously glanced in Yi Zichen's direction. Suddenly, his pupils constricted and a skull-shaped axe appeared in his hands. Looking ahead, a silver steel ball was shooting toward him at high speed. With a loud bang, the steel balls hit the battle axe. Suddenly, a huge force was transmitted from the battle axe to his arm, causing his hand to tremble and numb. He took a few steps back. You haven't played with the dog yet? At the same time, Xianji's light laughter rang out from afar. There were several steel balls in her hand, and she was fiddling with them. They were exactly the same as the steel ball Sha Ke had just blocked. She smiled playfully. The demon god's expression darkened, and he stomped hard on the ground. The steel ball embedded in the ground flew into the air. With a wave of his axe, the steel ball flew back to Xianji's side. In the face of the exploding steel ball, Xianji simply smiled calmly and stretched out her hand. A gray and white 8 trigrams spiritual formation appeared in her palm. When the steel bead, which carried endless hostility, touched the 8 trigrams spiritual formation, the force was completely neutralized, and it safely fell into her palm. Not bad. You dare fight back? But since you're quite pitiful, I won't teach you a lesson. Hurry up and go play with your dog, or else. Xianji smiled, but she opened her palm. A dozen or so silver steel balls floated in front of her. It was obvious that if Sha Ke hadn't gone looking for the black dog, he wouldn't have just tossed a steel ball at him. He'd tossed the steel ball back because he wanted to preserve some of his dignity and prestige in front of the demons. If he really did fight Xianji, He could tell from her 8 trigrams spiritual formation that the gap between them was growing wider and wider. In his current state, it would be difficult for him to exchange blows with her. Shaka silently turned his head away. It could be said that he was ready to vent his anger on that black dog. But when he looked at the black dog, the dog actually bared its teeth at him, then turned around to face him with its butt and wagged its tail at him. Shaka's face instantly turned ashen. It was one thing to be humiliated by Xianji, but now even this dog dared to provoke him. Ha ha! Shaku, you really are a pitiful demon god. Even a dog looks down on you. Xianji's perfectly timed mockery was like fuel thrown onto Shaku's flames of fury. His fury reached a boiling point. Retreat. The holy maiden acted as if she'd received a warning. She led the demon elites back 100 meters. Boom! The instant they retreated, demonic power surged out of Shaku's body. The thick purple mist seemed to declare its sovereignty, invading the surrounding space. You're not so stupid. You know this dog isn't ordinary. You even know to open your domain, snorted Xianji. Shaku had absolute control over the violet mist. This was his domain after becoming a sovereign. This was where a ruler's strength lay. After breaking through, any ruler would form their own domain. A domain existed outside of the existing space and was not bound by the existing world. It was a minor world that belonged to a ruler. Within a domain, a ruler was the law, the creator. If he wanted water to flow in reverse, it would have to flow in reverse. If he said this was life, it would flourish. If he said this was death, there would be no living creatures. Inside this domain, a ruler could rule over everything. If a sovereign were to constantly release his domain, he might even be able to achieve true immortality. When ordinary rulers broke through, the talented ones could control an area of around 50 meters, while the average ones could only control a dozen or so meters. Only with a deeper understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth, and as one's cultivation increased, could one expand their domain. Shaku's current domain could only be unleashed by a high-level ruler. Anyone who could become a demon god was no ordinary person. Even though he'd suffered under Xianji's hands, he was still someone who could make the entire 3 realms tremble. Of course, this wasn't his limit, but against a dog. Chapter 1320. If you can't win, run, so this is a domain. The geniuses who'd come to participate in the battle of geniuses stared at the dense purple mist with awe and longing in their eyes. Even diviners were limited by the laws. They couldn't move freely. Of course, to truly transcend the laws, one had to break through to the transcendent realm. Transcendence was too far away for them. Even for rulers, it was an unreachable realm. Transcendence was too difficult. In the history of the upper 3 realms, only one person had truly transcended the laws. He was the first Star Lord of the North Star. Everyone else, even the God Emperor, Demon Emperor, and Monster Emperor, were still limited by the laws. Although they were infinitely close to transcending, they couldn't take that final step. Although the chances of transcending were slim, becoming a ruler meant that they could at least truly rule over their own domain, even if they still couldn't transcend the laws. Cultivators. They lived for eternity. They lived to transcend the world. As the geniuses of the 3 realms yearned for a ruler's domain, Shaku's domain enveloped the black dog. The moment the domain enveloped the black dog, it suddenly quieted down. Its long black tail drooped to the ground, and its long, narrow eyes stared straight ahead. Shockingly, there was an afterimage in the place it was staring at. The afterimage was like a demon. Outside the purple mist, one could vaguely make out its head, which was more than 300 meters long. It had an all-shaped face and prominent cheekbones. Its large eyes glinted with a menacing purple light, and its gaping maw seemed capable of swallowing the heavens and the earth. Its fangs were razor-sharp, and its long hair trailed the ground. The black dog was staring at this afterimage. Gradually, the black dog became restless under Lin Huang's gaze. It hunched its back warily and circled around in a 2-meter radius. Its provocative gaze vanished, replaced by a very human expression of solemnity. Every now and then, it let out a low, uneasy growl. The black dog stopped, and a low growl filled with ferocity came from its throat. Its sharp claws began to scratch the ground restlessly, its eyes filled with ferocity as it stared at the afterimage in front of it. It sensed the threat posed by the afterimage. It didn't know what the afterimage was for, but it was very uneasy. Do you think this black dog is a match for the demon god of the demon clan? As the black dog faced off against the demon god, Lihu nudged Luo Zi with his elbow, then shot them a look. Just like before, Jiang Wei's eyes were filled with indifference. His temperament seemed to be very dismissive of everything. Earlier, when the Holy Maiden told him that Yi Zichen had the Xianyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda, he'd been slightly surprised. Even when Xianji revealed Yi Zichen's shocking background, he didn't bat an eyelid. The others didn't say anything either. They just stared ahead with solemn eyes. I don't think so. Jiang Yong, who also wielded a battle axe, chimed in. Can it win? It killed a devil general in an instant just now. Lihu said, instantly killing a demonic general is a surprise attack, and the difference between a demonic god and a demonic general isn't just a tiny bit. As you can see, this demon god's domain can be said to be quite strong. Under the domain, he is the ruler. Although the black dog's cultivation level was unknown, it shouldn't have reached the level of a demon god. If even a single battle pet can stand up to a demon god, what kind of person is its master? Jiang Yong asked. What should we do then? It should be on our side. Shouldn't we help it? With that, Lihu nudged Yi Zichen with his shoulder. Platoon leader Yi, do you know this dog? It seems to have come to save you. If you know it, then ask the Empress to save it. To be honest, Yi Zichen felt like he had seen this dog somewhere before. When he saw the black dog, he felt a sense of déjà vu. However, regardless of whether they knew each other or not, since they were here to save him, there was no reason for him to ignore them. Given his cultivation, he was no match for the demon god. He subconsciously glanced at Xianji, but all he saw was an expressionless face. It was clear that Xianji would not interfere. Jiang Yong shrugged at Lihu, then turned to Lihu. If something really happens to this black dog, its master will come out. You don't have to worry about it. Furthermore, this black dog's cultivation is absolutely high. It should be able to last a few hundred rounds against the demon god. The Holy Maiden paid close attention to the demon god and the black dog. She really wanted to see just what level the black dog was at and why it had struck fear in her heart. The others did the same. They were all waiting for the black dog to make its move. The black dog let out another low growl. The onlookers couldn't help but arch their brows. Was it about to attack? The demon elite's gazes were solemn, but the Yao and God race cultivators were filled with anticipation. This was a demon god, not a demon general. If the black dog could bite the demon god to death, it would be a good thing for both sides. They watched with rapt attention, all looking forward to the reappearance of the black shadow. They never would have guessed. Whoa! The black dog stared at the afterimage for a while, then let out a whimper. The next moment it wagged its tail, turned its head, and ran away, whimpering all the while. Damn it! Is it begging for mercy? The God race and Yao race powerhouses couldn't help but ridicule. Was this black dog that didn't even put up any resistance and was just about to run away? Was it really the same black dog that had a look of disdain on its face and provoked the entire devil race, standing on the devil general's face and pissing on him? The difference between now and then was too great. This time, it was facing a demon god, a level higher than the demon general. But at least it had put on a fierce front. Now that it had run into the demon god, it should at least take a bite or two. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this dog was a piece of work. Those who'd been waiting for the black dog to create a miracle were speechless. They stared at the fleeing dog and couldn't help but sigh. Run? Could it really run? It had already entered a ruler's domain, but it still wanted to run? Wasn't that a joke? If it didn't resist, how was that any different from waiting for death? They could already imagine what would happen to the black dog. A few people were even hoping that it would make a final, desperate counterattack. Even if it couldn't kill the demon god, heavily wounding it would be a good thing. However, the black dog was determined to run away. It kept whimpering and barking at the same time. Shaka stood beneath the purple mist, a savage grin on his face. Ever since he'd met Xianji, he'd been suppressed. He'd lost all face, and the rage in his heart was enough to burn down the entire divine mountain. He needed something to vent, and the black dog before him was. "You want to run now? It's too late." As soon as he spoke, the blurry figure in the purple mist opened its bloody maw. The fleeing black dog turned its head. When it saw the gaping maw, it ran even faster, its whimpering growing louder. Die! The gaping maw swallowed the black dog whole. The dog looked like it was about to cry. It howled at the sky. "Didn't you say you could handle it? Now you're asking me for help?" A disdainful voice suddenly appeared in the sky. When the black dog heard it, it howled a few more times. "As long as you're afraid, that's good. Damn it! I told you to advance, but you're so arrogant. Do you know who's boss now?" The black dog howled again. "Get down, you little puppy." A gust of wind howled through the air, making it difficult for everyone to open their eyes. By the time the wind dissipated, the demon god's purple mist had been completely dispersed. Chapter 13:21. That place, that frightening Placia's, the purple mist dissipated. The world became clear once more. In the purple mist, the afterimage with its bloody mouth opened, naturally dissipated from the world. It had been created by a demon god and wasn't recognized by the laws of the world. It could only exist within the demon god's domain. The domain had been destroyed, and the soul had been destroyed. Everything that had been devoured by the demon god's domain was restored to its former state. Not only that, but one could even smell the faint scent of grass on the wind. The demon god's domain has been destroyed. The eyes of the onlookers trembled as if they'd just experienced an earthquake. Their eyes were filled with shock. A single gust of wind had destroyed the demon god's domain? What realm was this person at? No, this was beyond the realm of mortals. This was a god. If the experts of the god race had reached the supremacy stage, they would be considered a god race. However, their original bodies were still humans with mortal bodies. But just now, a single gust of wind had destroyed the demon god's domain. In their eyes, this was a god. The geniuses who hadn't reached the ruler level could only sigh in amazement, but those who had reached the ruler level were truly shocked. They'd never heard of anyone who could destroy a ruler's domain with a wave of a hand. Even god emperors had relied on their understanding of domains to suppress and devour their opponents' domains. What's more, this was a demon god's domain. It was several hundred meters wide. This was far more stable than an ordinary ruler's domain. Even so, it had only been a gust of wind. How is this possible? The Yao King's eyes were grave. He'd lived for so long, but he'd never seen someone who could destroy a domain with a single gust of wind. Could it be that the owner of this black dog had already transcended? No, there was another possibility. This person was from that place. That place had existed since the first era. It had completely transcended the three realms and was no longer governed by the laws. It had hidden itself from the world since the second era and hadn't appeared for hundreds of millions of years. Why did the people from that place suddenly come out? Could it be that they wanted to interfere with the rule of the three realms? The Yao King's eyes grew even more grave when he thought of this. If someone from that place came, even the god, Yao, and demon emperors would have to be careful, let alone demon gods and Yao Kings. He subconsciously glanced at Xianji. In his opinion, given Xianji's divination skills, she should be able to divine. She was smiling at them. As expected, the Yao King's heart immediately sank. From Xianji's smile, he already knew what he wanted to know. It seemed like there was a need to reconsider all the arrangements within the clan. "Idiot, are you panicking now?" After meeting the Yao King's gaze, a smile appeared on Xianji's lips. In fact, she didn't even try to figure out where these people were from. Even if she really wanted to, with the transcendental position of that place, she wouldn't be able to calculate it using the rules of this world. But even if he used his toes to think, to be able to do this, who else could it be other than that person? Could it be a transcendence born in this era? This was simply impossible. Without a doubt, this peerless expert was from that place. No wonder the god Emperor Zhou Wu still hadn't shown himself. He must have known that someone from that place would come to the god realm. Even he would have to respectfully lower himself if he ran into someone from that place. In order not to damage his dignity in front of the god realm, he might as well not show himself. You're really thinking too much. Xianji snorted softly and looked up into the sky. With someone from that place here, this farce could finally come to an end. After the domain disappeared, the black dog, who was lying on the ground, kicked its legs and stood up. Its face was full of pride, and it faced the demon god provocatively, wagging its tail incessantly. Even more hateful, it brazenly peed in front of the demon god, as if to demonstrate its might. This black dog, seeing its arrogant demeanor, the heroes of the god realm and Yao realm didn't know what to say. Had it forgotten how its legs had turned to jelly, how it lay trembling on the ground and whimpered? Woof! After peeing, the black dog even barked at the demon god. Its eyes brimmed with disdain, and it rolled its eyes in a very human-like manner, then turned its head and ignored the demon god. That black dog really is outrageous. Someone in the crowd couldn't help but mutter. Shui Mo and the other society leaders stared at the sky. Their minds were filled with images of that gale and their shattered domains. I've never underestimated this dog's master. Ever since this black dog was able to instantly kill a devil general, I knew that its master was definitely one of the most powerful people in the world. However, this senior has given me a completely new understanding of him. Jiang Yang's eyes were filled with solemnity. Momo, Bebe, did Big Sister China tell you that someone from that place is about to appear? Murong Shui glanced at Shui Imo, and Shui Bebe shook their heads. At that moment, Yi Zichen suddenly slapped his thigh. I remember now. The sudden exclamation startled the people next to him. Liu asked with widened eyes. What the hell? You remember now? Yi Zichen didn't answer. Instead, he stared intently at the insufferably arrogant black dog. The dog had changed far too much. No wonder he hadn't remembered. But he was absolutely certain that this was the dog he was thinking of. If it really was him, then didn't that mean its master was? Could it really be him? Yi Zichen looked up, his eyes brimming with anticipation. In the face of the black dog's provocation, Shaka didn't react in the slightest. On the other hand, a hint of fear could be seen in his eyes. He couldn't help but be afraid. No one knew better than him just how strong his domain was. With a wave of his hand, a gust of wind had shattered his domain. Not even a demon god could do such a thing. To be able to do that, there were only... Who are you? Shaka refused to believe that he was the person from that place. It hadn't shown its face for hundreds of millions of years. Just when the era was about to come to an end, it suddenly appeared. That was simply impossible. Besides, that place had transcended long ago. There was no need for them to interfere with the end of this era. Who the hell are you? I am Sha Ku, one of the 16 demon gods. How dare you provoke me? Aren't you afraid? What's there to be afraid of? What? Do you demons dare challenge me? There was no one to be seen, but his voice seemed to come from every direction. Then do you dare state your name? Roared Sha Ku. Why wouldn't I dare? That person's disdainful chuckle appeared in the void. Then he said word by word. Chapter 1322. Outside Special Envoy Yang Jian. The person in the sky announced his name. At that moment, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up with a brilliant light. It really was him. When he confirmed that the black dog was the howling celestial dog, he'd wondered if that person really was his good friend, Yang Jian. To think it really was him. To those who'd never lived in the modern realm, this name was unfamiliar. The way they saw it, it might just be this senior's name. But to those who'd lived in the modern realm, especially those Yi Zichen knew, they didn't recognize him. When they heard Yang Jian's name, they glanced at him. He's still alive, and he's gotten so strong. Yi Zichen couldn't even tell if he was smiling or not. Gu Zichen had sent Yang Jian here ever since the beginning of the struggle for the 3 realms and the lower realms, and the fight for the position of master of the 3 realms. Since then, he hadn't heard any news of Yang Jian. Based on Yi Zichen's understanding of Yang Jian, he'd been worried that he'd provoked some other major power. But now it seemed he'd been overthinking things. Yang Jian was doing far better than he'd expected. Not only that, but he was terrifyingly strong. I already told you my name. What else do you want to know? Snorted Yang Jian. Yang Jian? Shaku had been searching for information on Yang Jian, but he'd never heard of such a person. From the other party's tone, one could really feel his disdain for the demon race. Could it be that he really was from that place? If he really was from that place, then why'd he try to kill that person's dog? Wasn't that suicidal? He couldn't believe Yang Jian was from that place. All he could bet on was, he wasn't. Do you dare show yourself? Shaka gnashed his teeth, his face ashen. You're quite interesting, kid. What do I have to be afraid of? Kid. Shaka almost coughed up blood. He'd lived for who knew how many years. Although he wasn't considered old among demons, he was no kid either. But after thinking it over, he could only let it go. If this person really was from that place, he could only endure being called kid. But why was being a demon god so frustrating? What was wrong with him recently? If you want to see me, I'll let you see me. Everyone else turned to look at the sky as well. Whether it was the geniuses participating in the battle of geniuses, the rulers, or even Xianji and the Yao King, they all wanted to see this peerless expert. A ripple appeared in the sky, like a stone falling into water. Everyone saw that from within the ripple. This guy. When he saw Yang Jian step out of the void, Yi Zichen was speechless. The person who came was indeed Yang Jian, the king of flame war, Yang Jian, whom he met in the heavenly court. But what was his current situation? What was he wearing? Yang Jian appeared in front of everyone with a pair of black sunglasses over his eyes and a cigarette in his mouth. He was dressed in colorful underpants as if he was going on a vacation, and he was wearing wooden slippers on his feet. This was exactly what Yi Zichen was wearing in the modern realm. Even in the modern realm, his attire would be rather eye-catching. Here, it was even more out of place. Howling Celestial Dog shook its head and ran to Yang Jian's side with its four paws. Before it could get close, Yang Jian gave a kick. Are you still going to show off? I worked so hard to help you break through, yet you're still trying to be naughty? The Howling Celestial Dog whimpered, wagged its tail, and scooted over pitifully. Yang Jian glanced at its feet. Come here and lie down. It lowered its head and obediently crawled over. Yang Jian took off his sunglasses, peeking out a slit in his sneaky eyes. Yi Zichen was all too familiar with this gaze. He was flirting with a girl. After a short while, Yang Jian pushed his sunglasses back up and crushed the cigarette in his hand. Kid, your grandpa Yang Jian is here. Do you have any other orders? Yi Zichen didn't feel any pressure from Yang Jian's body. As he stood in the sky, he looked like a mortal. They couldn't sense even the slightest fluctuation of divine power. But since he could fly, that meant he was at least a sky sovereign expert. Yi Zichen hadn't expected him to actually come out. When Yang Jian appeared, Shaka paid close attention to his surroundings and waited for the laws to appear. The people of that place had already transcended the laws and couldn't return here. But even after all this time, he still hadn't seen the laws appear. He wasn't from that place. Although Shaka didn't know what sort of demonic technique he'd used to shatter his domain with a gust of wind. But since he wasn't from that place, Shaka had nothing to fear. You're quite obedient, aren't you? When I tell you to come out, you come out. Shaka snorted. He narrowed his eyes at Yang Jian, who was hovering in the air. Now that you've come out, I wanted to ask you how you're going to deal with this. Deal with what? Yang Jian arched his brows. Your dog killed one of our demon generals. Don't you owe us an explanation? Said Shako. So what? He wanted to touch my bro? Didn't he deserve more than death? Yi Zichen instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. I think the one who died was Yi Zichen. Platoon leader Yi. The people around Yi Zichen were at a loss for words. Yi Zichen's background was shocking. They'd just begun to digest it, and now another terrifyingly strong bro had appeared. Your bro? Shaka knit his brows. You don't need to know because you can die too. Suddenly, Yang Jian's eyebrows that were exposed outside his sunglasses furrowed. As he frowned, the people around him felt the temperature drop in an instant. The howling celestial dog bared its fangs at the demon god, its expression ferocious. Ha ha, what a joke. Shaka suddenly burst into laughter. I admit that I might not be a match for you. But if you kill me, do you dare? If you kill me, you'll have to bear the wrath of the entire demon race. Can you bear the consequences? In response to Shaku's threat, Yang Jian smiled playfully. Kid, you seem to be mistaken about something. Shaka's gaze shifted. He watched as Yang Jian slowly descended from the sky and landed directly in front of him. The hand he'd been using to put out his cigarette grinned and reached into the air. When he reached his hand back, a cyan tablet appeared in his hand. The character Te was engraved on it. When they saw it, Xianji and the Yao King couldn't help but knit their brows. Shaka's eyes lost their previous perverse glint. Instead, they were filled with terror. Yang Jian clenched the tablet and slapped Shaka's face twice. Chapter 1323. Chapter 1323. The three emperors gather. The azure wooden token was about the size of a palm, and the word envoy was written on it in flamboyant calligraphy. One could faintly sense the aura of a dragon and a tiger from the words, and they exuded a dignified aura. When Yang Jian took out the envoy's token, Shaka's heart sank. This special envoy's hand token was definitely not fake. The entire hand token was a cyan blue color, which was the unique color of the green willow wood in the outer realm. It was impossible to grow azure willow trees in the territories of the other god races, Yao races, and demon races. The hand slapped Shaka's face loudly, but he stood there like a block of wood. He didn't dare dodge or resist. Now you're well behaved. Where's the arrogance you used to yell at me? He kicked Shaka. He staggered a few steps before stabilizing himself. Lord Demon God. Some of the demon elites ran out. A few youths even raised their weapons and charged at Yang Jian, as if they wanted to show off in front of the demon god. However, they didn't even manage to touch the hem of Yang Jian's clothes. A few afterimages flashed past them. These demon elites turned into ice-cold corpses and fell to the ground. After biting them to death, the howling celestial dog glared threateningly at the other demons, its fur standing on end. Vile creature, you dare kill my demon compatriots? Shut up. Shaka's shout was like a clap of thunder, suppressing the indignant demons. After that, he pushed aside the demon elites around him. Shaka glanced at the demon elites lying on the ground, still bleeding profusely. He turned his head away, gritted his teeth, and braced himself as he walked up to Yang Jian. Please calm your anger, Lord Envoy. This lowly one had eyes, but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please don't take out your anger on us demons, because of those people. The mighty demon god was now as lowly as an ant. He lowered his head and apologized. Yang Jian smiled indifferently. He grabbed Shaka's chin and made him look at him. You don't accept it, do you? Of course Shaka wouldn't accept it. He had overcome many obstacles to become a demon god. He wasn't some weakling. If it wasn't for the fact that Yang Jian had the support of the outer realm, and that he had the special envoy's token in his hand, how could he have been convinced? He quickly hid the unwillingness in his eyes and shook his head. I wouldn't dare. Don't dare means yes. A smile appeared on Yang Jian's sullen face. He released his hand formed from divine power and lifted Shaka's chin. He looked at the entire demon race. Are you guys also unconvinced? Everyone kept quiet out of fear. In front of Yang Jian, even the devil gods were as weak as ants. How could mere Empyreans, Devis, and sovereigns compare to him? However, their fear did not mean that the entire demon race was a coward. Saintus, please, before he could say anything, the holy maiden slapped him across the face. The force of the slap was so great that a few of the hero's teeth flew out. His face instantly swelled up like a steam bun. The holy maiden bowed deeply once more. Esteemed envoy, please forgive us. There's not a single demon who refuses to submit to the outside's jurisdiction. Those who died can only blame themselves for not knowing how to appreciate kindness. Also, I'll deal with the demon who spoke just now. As for Shaku, you can do whatever you want with him. Your Excellency, what are your orders? Asked the holy maiden. When he saw her face, Yang Jian froze. If he remembered correctly, she seemed to have a close relationship with Yi Zichen. He glanced at Yi Zichen, only to see him shake his head. In truth, Yang Jian didn't quite understand what that shake meant. However, he was sure he'd remembered correctly. Although he didn't know how she'd become a demon, and her cultivation wasn't low at all, he still had to give her some face. It's fine. Go back and stay put. Yang Jian ignored the holy maiden and narrowed his eyes at Sha Ke. Look at the demons you serve. Did you hear that? They've already given up on you. They're afraid you'll provoke me, so they completely ignore you. They don't even dare plead for you. Don't you feel sorry for yourself? Sha Ke said nothing. How about this? Yang Jian laughed calmly. You must be thinking that if your demon emperor were here, he'd definitely plead for you. Why don't I let your devil emperor come out and see what he thinks? The demon emperor? The crowd grew restless. At the same time, Yang Jian patted Sha Ke on the head and shouted into the sky. All of you, come on out. What are you still hiding for? The sky was suddenly filled with 3 colors: azure, gold, and violet. At the center of each color stood a single person. Most likely, the light was coming from each of them. Each of them stood in a different direction, dividing the sky into 3. None of them gave way to the other. The onlookers were dumbfounded. Standing in the center of the golden light was God Emperor Zhou Wu, the azure light was Yao Emperor Tai, and the violet light was Demon Emperor Kuei Lin. Normally, none of the 3 great emperors showed their faces. Who would have thought they'd all show up at the same time? Before long, the light faded, and the 3 of them landed on the ground. Brother Yang, the 3 of them cupped their hands in greeting. The emissary from the outside was worthy of their respect. Yang Jian also nodded to them as a way of returning the courtesy. They were the emperors of the 3 realms, after all. Even if Yang Jian was the emissary, they still had to give him some face. After the greetings, the 3 emperors fell silent. Yang Jian didn't speak, and they simply stood to the side. Just what is the outside doing? Why did the god, Yao, and demon emperors give them the cold shoulder just because they said so? Quite a few people wondered. They didn't know what the outside represented, but the rulers present did. Even if he was a small fry from the outside, they had to treat him with caution. Besides, this was the emissary from the outside. Giving the 3 emperors the cold shoulder wasn't surprising at all. Your demon emperor is here. Yang Jian patted Sha Ke's face, then turned to the demon emperor. I'm sure you know what's going on, so I won't repeat myself. This kid is one of your people, and a demon god at that. He must have quite a high status among the demons. Tell me what you want to do with him. As he spoke, Sha Ke looked at the demon emperor with a desperate desire to live. He didn't want to die, and the demon emperor was his last hope. To his disappointment, however, the demon emperor didn't so much as look him in the eye. When he heard Yang Jian's question, the demon emperor's face rippled with a hearty smile. This blind fool has angered you, Brother Yang. I'll leave it to you to decide how to deal with him. Instantly, Sha Ke's heart froze. He'd fought for the demons his entire life, helping them expand their territory. He'd played no small part in helping Kuei Lin ascend to the demon emperor's position. But his heart truly froze. After Kuei Lin's explanation, Sha Ke. Chapter 1324. Chilling heart, did you hear that? I'll do as I please. Yang Jian smirked. Kuei Lin stood silently to the side, playing the role of a backdrop. He had to do this. Although Sha Ke was a demon god, provoking a transcendent race from the outside for him wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. He had deliberately planned to attack the god race at this time, so that he could lead his race and become the second race to successfully escape the destruction of the end of the era. If they provoked the special envoy now, the outsiders would hold a grudge against them. That would make up for the losses. Little did he know that God Emperor Zhou Wu and Yao Emperor Tai were thinking the same thing. Now that the end of the era was upon them, they were preparing for it. The outsiders were the only truly transcendent faction. Not only could they not provoke them, but they had to be on good terms with them. Perhaps they'd even receive some advice or help. Sha Ke's heart sank. He wouldn't kneel and beg for mercy. He was a man with a backbone. If he was going to die, then he'd die with a bang. Just kill me. Sha Ke glared at Yang Jian. There was no longer any reason for him to hesitate. He didn't want to blame Kuei Lin for being heartless. At his position, he had to think about the long term. For the future of his race, he had to make this choice. But there was no need to say anything else. All he wanted was death. You want to die? Yang Jian couldn't help but chuckle at the resolute look in Sha Ke's eyes. Then I'll fulfill your wish. Before anyone could see Yang Jian's movements, Shaku collapsed to the ground, his eyes closed. Shaku's body lay lifeless on the ground. There was no sign of life in his body. He took a white cloth out of thin air and wiped his hands. The cloth fell to the ground, covering Shaku's face. Killing him won't appease my anger. I want to take him back. What do you think? Yang Jian looked at Kuei Lin. Of course, said Kuei Lin. With a wave of his hand, Shaku's body vanished from sight. The demons clenched their fists. They were also a little disappointed. The demon god, who'd done so much for the demon race, had been killed just like that. He hadn't even dared resist. Not only that, the corpse did not even resist when the other party took it away. This was too disappointing. I'm very grateful to the demon the Arch for cooperating with me. I'm also grateful to the god the Arch and the demon the Arch for being my background for so long. The god, Yao, and demon emperors smiled sheepishly. Yang Jian narrowed his eyes as he spoke to everyone present. You might think that I'm too domineering, killing whoever I want. However, all of this is based on the fact that you are the weaker party. When you go to kill others, have you ever thought about those who were killed? When you wanted to attack my brother, did you ever think of stopping? These people who died deserve to die. Of course, you can hate me. I won't stop you. However, if I find out who dares to touch a single hair on my brother's head, it won't be as simple as killing the person involved. You all understand. At this point, Yang Jian deliberately glanced at the three emperors. When he saw Yi Zichen's mocking smile, he pursed his lips and snorted, then walked in front of Yi Zichen. Let's go. He grabbed Yi Zichen by the shoulder, then disappeared with the howling celestial dog. The entire square was eerily quiet, and the demon emperor's face was so dark that it looked like it was about to drip water. Brother Dong Wang, Brother Kuei Lin, do you think the battle of geniuses should continue? Asked God Emperor Zhou Wu. Of course. No matter how the situation changed, the battle of geniuses was the most honorable way for the devil race to enter and leave the divine world. For the sake of that plan, he had planned it for far too long. How could he give up just because of this little setback? With that, Kuei Lin let out a furious snort. With a wave of his sleeve, he shattered space and left. The demon Arch cupped his hands at the god Arch and flew away. Out of the three great emperors, only the god emperor remained and looked at the mess on the ground. Xianji, your subordinate is here. Xianji took a few steps forward and heard the god emperor speak. I'll leave this place to you. The lot drawing ceremony will be held tomorrow, and I'll leave it to you as well. Forget it. I'll leave the divine mountains to you for now. I'm a bit tired, so don't come looking for me if there's nothing particularly important. Your subordinate obeys. Rubbing his temples, God Emperor Zhou Wu vanished from a void. Xianji remained at the front. She looked at the gods, Yao, and demons. The lot-drawing ceremony will be held at noon tomorrow. If you want to withdraw, feel free to do so. In any case, if you still want to participate in the Battle of Geniuses, gather here at noon tomorrow. Yang Jian led Yi Zichen to a thatched hut. The hut faced a clear stream. Its bottom could be seen. The hut faced a mountain range that stretched for thousands of kilometers without end. Birds sang, and the fragrance of flowers filled the air. It was a delightful scene. The hut was surrounded by fences, forming a small courtyard. There were quite a few herbs growing inside, and a pot of steaming tea sat on a stone table in the center of the courtyard. Is this where you live? This was obviously a hermit's residence. Given his understanding of Yang Jian, there was no way he'd have guessed this was where he lived. This? Of course not. We haven't seen each other in a long time, and I don't have a place to live in the God realm. It just so happened that I took a liking to this place, so I discussed it with the owner and decided to borrow it. What do you think? This place isn't bad, right? Borrow. Yi Zichen could already guess how Yang Jian had borrowed it. If he'd said borrow as politely as anyone else, that wouldn't have been him. No wonder he'd said he had some business to take care of, but it turned out he'd come to steal the house. Not bad. Yi Zichen nodded. Haha. As expected, there's nothing wrong with my eyes. Yang Jian laughed heartily, then inexplicably sighed with emotion. He patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder. It's been a long time since we last met. It's been a long time. Yi Zichen couldn't help but nod. It's been over 100 years since you ascended. And here I thought you'd be miserable, given your personality. I never would have guessed the God Emperor and the others were so afraid of you. Sigh, don't mention it. When I first arrived, I really was miserable. But then, Yang Jian shook his head, sighed, and couldn't help but reminisce. I missed the days when I was in the heavenly court. When I had time, I could still chat with those guys in the chat group. I wonder how they're doing. Do you still have your phone? Asked Yi Zichen. Of course. Yang Jian snatched his phone out of thin air. This is something I've always wanted. I've always kept it. Chapter 1325. Yang Jian returns to the group. When Yang Jian first arrived on the Divine Mountains, he tried contacting Yi Zichen and the others through his phone, but now that he was on the Divine Mountains, he couldn't send any messages to the group. From then on, he gave up on using his phone and sealed it away for all eternity. Over the years, whenever he missed his old friends, he'd take his phone out of thin air and look at it. Memories of his past flooded his mind. However, he'd never tried using divine power to charge it. He knew full well that without the internet, there was no way to send messages. But now, Yi Zichen told him to turn it on. He arched his brows, but didn't ask any further questions. Charging his phone was a simple matter. He silently infused it with divine power, and the phone's screen lit up. It's been almost 100 years since I last used it. As he turned it on, Yang Jian smiled at Yi Zichen. I'm just afraid that if I turn it on, I'll miss my old friends. Yi Zichen simply smiled in response. Yang Jian stared at his phone screen. Until, buzz, his phone began to vibrate like crazy. Messages from the Red Packet server kept popping up on the screen. He froze. He saw disbelief in his eyes. Yi Zichen chuckled and gestured for him to open the messages. Let's talk to our old friends. Within the Red Packet server, chatting was the group's daily task, especially after the Divine Mountains connected to the internet. Practically every day, the immortals in the group had to listen to people on the Divine Mountains talk about their experiences there. God of Fortune, great sage, when can you bring us up there to play for a few days? Monkey King, once I've established my footing here, I'll bring you all up. Yulao, Monkey King, when will you come over and have a few drinks? Old Lord Taishang says he misses you. Old Lord Taishang, when did I say that? Monkey King, that old geezer misses me. He wants to refine me, doesn't he? God of Thunder, how many years has it been? Great Sage, you're too vengeful. Old Lord Taishang, petty. Monkey King, hey you old geezer, it seems you wanted to beat you up a few more times. Old Lord Taishang, you scare me to death. The group members joked around, but then, Xiao Tianquan, woof, woof, woof. The group fell silent. Whether it was the immortals in the heavenly court or the ones on the Divine Mountain, they all gripped their phones tightly as they stared at the howling celestial hound's words. This was especially true of the great sage of the northern Divine Mountain. He was currently drinking with Wei Jie and the others in a tavern within the Divine Mountain. When he saw the message from the celestial hound, he was stunned. His eyes were filled with a complicated expression as he stared at the message on his phone. Great Sage, Wei Jie asked suspiciously as he raised his cup of wine. The great sage raised his hand, indicating that they didn't need to worry about him. Then he put his hand down and typed out a line of words with a trembling hand. Why aren't they talking? Yang Jian, who had used Howling Celestial Dog's account to send a message, couldn't help but frown when he saw that no messages appeared on the screen for a long time. At that moment, Yi Zichen was also lurking in the group. He was already used to the group's sudden silence. Maybe they're a little surprised. The celestial howling dog is bound to you. If it comes out to speak, it must mean that you could come out too. They haven't seen each other for 100 years, so of course they're confused. Before he even finished speaking, the great sage's message appeared on the screen. Monkey King, my son. As soon as he sent the message, the great sage stared intently at his phone screen. His fiery eyes were filled with undisguisable anticipation. Until, Erlang Shun, Monkey King, are you looking to die? I'm your father, and you're my son. When Yang Jian saw the great sage's message, his face instantly turned green. He clenched his phone and sent the message as fast as he could. It really is him. The great sage, who was sitting at the table, suddenly laughed. His eyes glistened with tears. He looked at the message with a smile, and sent it out without any hesitation. Monkey King, Erlang Shun, my son, you've disappeared for almost 100 years, yet you didn't even tell your grand-grandson that you're safe? You're really too naughty. Erlang Shun, screw off. Monkey King, hey, you little brat, how can you speak to your elders like that? I haven't hit you in 100 years, so your skin's itching again? Erlang Shun, hurry up and hit me, all right? I'm scared to death. Monkey King, coordinates. Yulao, Old Yang really came back? Peng Marshall, Old Yang, you're still alive? God of Fortune, my God, I feel like all of our old brothers are back. God of Thunder, Yang Jian, Erlang Shun, of course Lousy is alive. What? Do you guys want Lousy to die outside? I'm telling you, even if Lousy dies, I'll definitely drag all of you down with me. That's what Yang Jian sent. But Yi Zichen, who sat beside him, could see the smile on his face. He's definitely very happy, right? Everything was the same as before. He fought with the great sage the moment he saw him, and the people who often spoke up in the group were still there. Bro, what's going on? Yang Jian looked at Yi Zichen with a silly smile. I couldn't send a message at all when I came. I brought the people who set up the network between the heavenly court and the underworld over. It was only recently set up, said Yi Zichen. Monkey King, Erlang Shun, my son, send me the coordinates. The great sage didn't relent and tag Yang Jian, saying he wanted to teach him how to respect his elders. Yang Jian curled his lips and ignored him. He chuckled and chatted with the others in the group. The great sage, who'd been left out in the cold, was infuriated. Messages from Yang Jian flooded the screen. Erlang Shun, stop blabbering. If you keep blabbering, you'll cry. Monkey King. In response to the great sage's questioning, Yang Jian sent a simple message. Yang Jian, Supreme Treasure? After sending that message, Yang Jian left the group, tossed his phone to the side, and laughed maniacally. Meanwhile, his phone buzzed and vibrated. Yi Zichen tilted his head and saw that the great sage had sent him a private message. I'm dying of laughter. Even this damn monkey has his day. I can't take it anymore. I have to celebrate. Yang Jian clutched his stomach and laughed maniacally. He ignored the great sage's message in the slightest. He wiped the tears from his eyes, then reached into the void and pulled out 2 bottles of ice cola, then tossed one to Yi Zichen. As for himself, he opened a bottle and gulped it down. While drinking, he choked on his laughter because he laughed too hard. It was as if extreme joy turned to sorrow. After a while, Yang Jian finally stopped coughing. He panted as he placed the cola on the table. Yi Zichen looked him up and down for a long time, then looked at the cola in his hands. This, Chapter 1326. The terror of contemplation. Yang Jian was still coughing dryly. The howling celestial dog wagged its tail and scooted up to him, its eyes filled with deep concern. Yi Zichen put down his can of cola, walked up to him, and patted his back a few times. Are you all right? I'm fine. Yang Jian shook his head hoarsely. I just wanted to laugh when I thought about how worried the monkey was. I choked on my cola. He coughed a few more times. Perhaps feeling a bit better, Yang Jian took a few sips of his half-empty can of cola. Why aren't you drinking? Yang Jian couldn't help but ask when he saw the can of cola still sitting on the table. I don't really feel like drinking. Although the modern realm Yi Zichen lived in was frozen, the heavenly court could already mass-produce modern realm items. So long as he wanted something through the Red Packet group, they'd naturally send it to him. However, he was rather curious as to why Yang Jian would have it. He'd only just found out about the network's setup. He hadn't seen anyone send him a can of cola. Yi Zichen wanted to ask, but the great sage's news made him even more curious. What did you just say about the Supreme Treasure? Why did it make the great sage so excited? You don't know, do you? Yang Jian's expression was colorful. He sat back in his chair with a wide smile and laughed. This is a story from before he went to Grandmaster Xuanzong to seek scriptures. Let me tell you, it's pretty explosive. Yang Jian's expression seemed to say, do you want to know? If you do, I'll tell you. Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes. He knew about the Supreme Treasure. In the story Journey to the West, the great sage was called the Supreme Treasure before he went to seek scriptures. Back then, he'd had a love-hate relationship with Fairy Zixia. Yi Zichen glanced at Yang Jian's gossipy face and froze despite himself. You didn't run into Zixia, did you? Yang Jian's smile instantly froze, and his eyes filled with disbelief. How did you know? You know about the monkey's supreme treasure too. No way, I'm right, exclaimed Yi Zichen. You're right, but I didn't run into Zixia. I just learned a bit about her. The monkey clearly knows too. Otherwise, why else would he be so excited? Yang Jian nodded. Zixia really existed. Yi Zichen blinked. He didn't know how to describe his current feelings. To be honest, he was an absolute atheist before he entered the Red Packet group. In his opinion, those immortals were just made-up stories, until he actually saw immortals. He believed it, but in his opinion, Journey to the West was absolutely fabricated, and the Zixia in it was definitely a fictional character. But now, he had no choice but to believe it again. Inexplicably, he couldn't help but panic. Why did all these seemingly fabricated myths and legends actually exist? Moreover, there were no discrepancies in the story. Be it the people or the events, they were all absolutely true. The only possibility was that someone knew all of this and passed it on to someone else. If that's the case, then it's a little scary. Yi Zichen rubbed his lips, his eyes filled with shock. If he didn't think about it, he wouldn't have realized it. But if he thought about it carefully, it was truly terrifying. These seemed to be myths, but they were actually real. Moreover, someone had purposely let everyone know of these stories. I can't think about it. If he continued to think about it, Yi Zichen was worried that he would lose sleep at night. The phone on the table stopped vibrating. Yi Zichen couldn't help but point at it. Are you sure you want to ignore the great sage like this? You know how bad his temper is. You think I'm afraid of him? I'm the outside special envoy. That monkey has beaten me up so many times in the past. I'm going to ignore him for a while and let him reflect on his mistakes, snorted Yang Jian. All right then. The two of them were old rivals, so Yi Zichen didn't want to get involved. At that moment, Yang Jian's special envoy medallion lit up. When he saw the flickering medallion, Yang Jian couldn't help but frown. You didn't even give me time to chat. He resentfully tossed the medallion into the air, then stood up. Bro, let's go. Yi Zichen didn't reply. Instead, he shot him a puzzled look. The outsiders want to see you. I'm actually here because they told me to pick you up and discuss something with you, said Yang Jian. They're looking for me? Yi Zichen was stunned. He never seen anyone from the outside before. Why would they want to see him for no apparent reason? He'd heard that the outside was the only faction that truly transcended the laws. From the way the god, Yao, and demon emperors treated Yang Jian, it was obvious. Even the mighty hegemons of an entire realm treated the outside's special envoy like brother. From this, it was clear how transcendent the outside status was. Why would such a faction want to see someone like him, who hadn't even reached the diviner level? Don't look at me. I don't know why they want to see you either, said Yang Jian. Can I not go? Asked Yi Zichen. What do you think? Asked Yang Jian. When he heard that, Yi Zichen gave up resisting. Even the God Emperor feared the outside. If they wanted to see him, how could he not go? But I'm sure they won't harm you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to pick you up, said Yang Jian, sensing Yi Zichen's concern. Yi Zichen didn't trust the outside, but he absolutely trusted Yang Jian. Since he'd said that, Yi Zichen had no reason to hesitate. He nodded. Then let's go. The void of primal chaos. Yang Jian grabbed Yi Zichen by the shoulder, and they floated through the void. As far as the eye could see, they were surrounded by black holes that swallowed up heaven and earth. Before long, Yi Zichen saw at least a few hundred black holes appear in the primal chaos. He even saw a relatively large black hole swallow up a relatively small one. With Yang Jian protecting him, Yi Zichen didn't sense any of the devouring power. We're here. Yi Zichen looked around at the primal chaos and couldn't help but ask. Yang Jian shook his head, a rare solemn expression in his eyes. He patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder and said solemnly, We're about to reach the outside. We'll be arriving at the outer realm soon. I stopped here to remind you, said Yi Zichen. What is it? Yang Jian looked at Yi Zichen, but he hesitated. His eyes betrayed his hesitation. After a while, he sighed softly and said, When we reach the outside, everything you see might leave you bewildered and shocked. You might even feel like your worldview is about to crumble. However, I hope you'll be able to keep your composure. The first time I went there, I was confused as well. I'm here to give you a mental boost so you can mentally prepare yourself. What do you mean? Yi Zichen didn't understand. Chapter 13:27. The Outside? The Modern Realm? Yang Jian's reminder filled Yi Zichen with undisguisable curiosity about the outside, a place that struck terror in the hearts of everyone. Just what kind of world was the outside? It actually made him feel like his worldview was collapsing. Moreover, from Yang Jian's gaze, he could really feel the seriousness in that gaze. There was also a faint hint of worry. Yi Zichen didn't ask what Yang Jian was trying to say. He knew that it was just as Yang Jian said. Once he reached the outside, the truth would naturally come to light. Yang Jian used his divine power to carry Yi Zichen to a black hole much larger than the others. It seemed that if they passed through it, they'd reach the so-called outside. Even then, Yang Jian patted Yi Zichen's shoulder heavily. You have to be mentally prepared. With that, they passed through. Yi Zichen was curious as to why Yang Jian's expression was so serious. However, even as they passed through the black hole, Yi Zichen, who hadn't even opened his eyes, heard a familiar car horn. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked. His eyes widened, and his arms trembled violently. In front of him was a series of skyscrapers. There was also a familiar LED screen in the commercial building, which was playing the trailer of a certain movie. Countless people shuttled through the streets. Perhaps it was because Yang Jian's clothes were too strange. Quite a few people glanced at them in astonishment. This was the outside. He was clearly in the city of ice he'd lived in for 20 years, and beneath his feet was the city's most bustling pedestrian street. Even the street signs were identical. There was no way he was wrong. This was the modern realm. He was back. Yi Zichen couldn't hide his astonishment. As he looked around at his familiar surroundings, he felt as if he'd suddenly returned home after living in a foreign land for a long time. He was clearly a sky supreme, but his eyes were so red that he wanted to cry. His lips quivered, but he didn't say a word. He just closed his eyes and listened to the horn that had annoyed him for decades. Hey! Someone patted him on the shoulder. When Yi Zichen opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful girl in a midriff-bearing top and minuscule shorts. She smiled and looked at him curiously. Jing Wan, wasn't this the streamer who'd invited him to join her team? Are you cosplaying? Yi Zichen was stunned yet again by this new and familiar phrase. Then he remembered that he was still wearing the same clothes he'd worn on the Divine Mountains. In the modern realm, he'd be considered an ancient costume. Although Yang Jian's Hawaiian plaid shirt and pants were a little exaggerated, it was not as eye-catching as him. Fortunately, the modern world was an all-inclusive era, and his strange clothing could also be treated as cosplay. However, from the looks of it, she didn't seem to recognize him. Why are your eyes so red? Did someone give you the cold shoulder after cosplaying? Be strong. I quite like your outfit, and it's also very suitable for you. Jing Wan said with a smile. Thanks, Yi Zichen nodded. Can I have your contact information? Jing Wan took out a phone covered in cartoon stickers from her bag and shook it a few times. Yi Zichen subconsciously frowned, causing the girl to laugh when she saw that. It's fine if it's inconvenient, but I'm actually not such a casual girl. I just don't know why. I have an indescribable feeling towards you. Here's my contact information. If it's possible, I hope you can add me. You're really cool. Jing Wan shoved a slip of paper into Yi Zichen's pocket, then waved and left. Yi Zichen took out the slip of paper. To his surprise, it was Jing Wan's social media number and phone number. Yi Zichen fished out her phone. He'd had her number back then, so he compared it. There was no mistaking it. This was the modern realm. Yi Zichen put the slip of paper back into his pocket, then looked at Yang Jian with a complicated gaze. Although he didn't say anything, his expression alone made it clear what he wanted to say. What the hell was going on? Why was the outside the modern realm he lived in? Why was that? Hadn't the modern realm been frozen during the demon invasion? Why hadn't it been frozen? Had it been unfrozen along the way? If so, what was he? Or were those who've been sucked into the modern realm like him? It's not what you think. Yang Jian sighed. What do you mean it's not? Isn't this the modern realm? This is where I live. At that moment, Yi Zichen's divine sense suddenly detected Jing Wan, the woman who'd given him the slip of paper. She was in the middle of a car accident. It didn't matter whether or not she still remembered him. Even if they'd only met by chance, there was no way Yi Zichen would allow such a tragedy to happen. However, before he could do anything, he saw Jing Wan perform a beautiful backflip. She'd leaped several meters into the air, then landed steadily. After landing, Jing Wan picked up her bag and left as if nothing had happened. The driver didn't stop at all. He continued driving his car. What's this? Could it be that she was actually a martial artist? No. If she were an ordinary martial artist, her body might be a bit stronger than the average person's, but leaping several meters into the air was simply too shocking. Before he could digest all of this, Yi Zichen saw several people fly through the air. Flying. Yi Zichen rubbed his eyes hard, then looked again. There really were a few men and women flying through the air above him, and quite a few of them. After spreading out his divine sense, Yi Zichen discovered that within 100 miles, there were at least several thousand people who could fly through the air. He was dumbfounded. He turned to look at Yang Jian, hoping to get a reasonable explanation. When Yang Jian saw his gaze, he sighed. I told you before we came, so you could prepare yourself. That's what you wanted me to prepare myself for? Why did the world I used to live in become like this? Why could those people fly? Could it be that they were all cultivators? What exactly happened to this world while I was gone? Tell me what's going on. Yi Zichen was rather agitated. You might not believe me, but this isn't the world you used to live in, said Yang Jian. That's impossible, said Yi Zichen with decisiveness that could sever nails and chop iron. I know that girl who gave me that note. She's Pu Jingwan, a famous streamer. She even invited me to join her battle team. I have her contact information. The contact information she gave me just now was the one she gave me before. Then can you explain why there are so many cultivators here? Yi Zichen was rendered speechless. Yang Jian patted him on the shoulder. How could he not know what Yi Zichen was thinking? When he'd first arrived, he'd thought the same thing. Chapter 1328. The outside made Yi Zichen collapse. He sat on a park bench. Yi Zichen didn't know how long he'd been sitting there. He didn't talk to Yang Jian. He just sat there in a daze. He looked around at the familiar surroundings, at the endless stream of pedestrians and cars. Want a cigarette? Yang Jian held a cigarette between his lips. He offered it to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen rubbed his tired head and accepted Yang Jian's cigarette. Then, he lit it with a ball of flame. He'd done it on purpose. He wanted to see how others would react when they saw that he could spit fire. But to his disappointment, the pedestrians didn't show any surprise at all when they saw it. Only now did Yi Zichen feel somewhat resigned. This wasn't the modern realm. Even if it was, it wasn't the modern realm he knew. Yi Zichen heaved a heavy sigh and sighed. So this is the outside. Yang Jian nodded. In truth, when I first got here, I was shocked too. I thought to myself, isn't this where my bro lives? Especially when we were on the pedestrian walkway just now. Back then, we squatted down every day to look at those beautiful legs. But can you believe it? Any random person here is at least a supreme level expert. Is that the old man practicing Tai Chi 1-2? Yi Zichen arched his brows. No, I knew it. Any random person is. That's a ruler. Yi Zichen was instantly dumbfounded. The old man, who was practicing Tai Chi, seemed to notice their gazes and even smiled towards them kindly. Bro, this is the outside. Do you know why the people of the upper realms are so afraid of the outside? It's because the people here are born supremes. They aren't restricted by the laws at all. They transcend everything, explained Yang Jian, worried that Yi Zichen didn't understand this clearly enough. No, I still don't quite believe it. Can you give me a few days to confirm it? Asked Yi Zichen. Yang Jian was somewhat hesitant. His superiors wanted him to go see Yi Zichen as soon as possible. However, when he considered his bro's current state of mind, he hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll ask my superiors. Half a month passed. During this time, Yi Zichen did simple things. He just wanted to confirm whether this place was exactly the same as the modern realm. In the end, he came to a conclusion that broke him. They were exactly the same. This was where he used to study in the university, and the snack street behind the school that he used to go to the most was also here. Even the owners of the shops had not changed. His university roommates were there too. The only difference was he did not exist in this world. It wasn't just him. Su Yin, Xia Kiki, Sun Yaij, and everyone else who'd lived in Yi Zichen's previous world, who descended while sealed in ice, no longer existed. As for those who were not expelled from the modern world, they all existed in this world. This place was like a big mirror to the modern world. Everything was almost the same. It was like a completely parallel world. Truly, truly unbelievable. Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. He simply couldn't believe that a world so similar to the modern realm would appear here. Logically speaking, if one thought about it carefully, this was a little terrifying. Why was the outside so similar to Yi Zichen's own world? Could it be that his world had been replicated? Now you can confirm it, right? Yang Jian couldn't help but speak up. He'd asked his superiors to come a bit later, but they hadn't directly agreed, nor had they urged him to. All they asked was that he stay by Yi Zichen's side and protect him. He didn't want to believe this was real. But at this point, he had no choice but to believe it. I'm sure. This is the outside, all right? That's right, I'm puzzled. Don't you know that when I came here, I had to think about how terrifying the outer realms were? Isn't it pretty good now? There are so many handsome men and beautiful women here, and they're all so gentle. Why are the people outside so afraid of the outside? Because you're currently in the outside's safety zone. Those who enter from the outside are in the quarantine zone. Safety zone? The quarantine zone? Yi Zichen was rather confused by Yang Jian's explanation. I don't know how to explain it to you. How about we go see my superiors? Said Yang Jian. All right. Yi Zichen nodded. He'd assumed that a transcendental organization like Yang Jian's would be located in the depths of the mountains, or somewhere completely isolated from the rest of the world. What left Yi Zichen speechless was that Yang Jian actually led him to the agency. There was also a group of armed police officers standing in a row outside. Yi Zichen snuck a glance at them, then looked away. He'd always remembered that everyone here was born a supreme. If he were to compare it to the place where he used to live, the most ordinary person would be a supreme being. For these people to be able to set up an organization to do things, they were at least Ava Realm or Ruler Realm experts. In his previous world, being a Sky Supreme wasn't bad, but here, he was nothing. The stone walkway was completely empty. As he walked, Yi Zichen deliberately stomped on the stone a few times, but even with his Sky Supreme strength, he couldn't break it. When they reached the end of the walkway, Yang Jian pushed open a door. Boss, Yi Zichen's here. The room wasn't small. There was an office desk opposite the window, with 2 bookshelves on either side. There was a swivel chair across from the desk, and a sofa diagonally across from it. Based on the layout, it was clearly an office. The man Yang Jian called boss had his back to them and was smoking. When he heard that Yi Zichen had arrived, he turned around and put out his cigarette in the ashtray. You're here. Sit. Yi Zichen pointed at a chair, hesitated for a moment, then sat down. Hello. Logically speaking, Yi Zichen found it hard to treat this place as the outside, a place beyond the laws. The boss before him, for example, was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He looked like a government official. When Yi Zichen looked at him, he felt like he was talking to a leader of the modern realm. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Han Nan, the mayor of Bingsheng. Hello, Mayor Han. I wanted to meet you for a long time, but I never had the chance. Fortunately, I ran into Yang Jian. That's how I got to know you. Judging by your looks, you're quite the talent. A dragon among men. What the hell was this? Was this just polite talk? What the hell? This was the outside. Could he not act like he was in the modern realm? Why did he have to say such things? Furthermore, it looked like he had a favor to ask of Yi Zichen. Why did you bring me here? Asked Yi Zichen. I called you here because I have something to ask of you, said Han Nan. You really know how to joke. This is the outside. You're asking me for a favor? How can I help you? Little friend, you're one of heaven's 2 chosen emperors, right? Chapter 1329. The outside's quest, the heavens chose 2 emperors. When Han Nan blurted out the 2 emperors' identities, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. He rested his fingers on the table and crossed his legs uneasily. Mayor Han, I don't know what you're talking about. The heavens chose 2 emperors. What do you mean? Yi Zichen played dumb. That was all Yi Zichen could do. The heavens chose 2 emperors, his deepest secrets. He couldn't possibly reveal everything just because Han Nan said it. Little friend Yi, don't you know? The heavens chose 2 emperors, the people who caused the North Star to appear. Normally, the Emperor Star will appear once in every era, but your era is a bit strange. You actually chose 3 masters. Han Nan said with a smile on his face. Previously, the 2 people chosen by the Emperor Star were your era's 5 elements Great Emperor. However, his luck wasn't too good, or perhaps he was too arrogant. Zhou Wu usurped his star's fate and became the current God Emperor. Otherwise, the current God Emperor would be him. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't choose him. Even if he usurped the 5 elements Great Emperor's fate, it would be difficult for him to become the Lord of the Stars and take that final step. The Emperor Star appeared once more, but this time it chose one of the 2. Yi Zichen sat across from Han Nan. His hands were already trembling. He knew far too much. He even knew about Zhou Wu usurping the 5 elements Great Emperor's fate. What are you trying to say? Yi Zichen's breathing quickened. He stared intently at Han Nan, who was still smiling like a spring breeze. Little friend Yi, you're one of the 2 emperors chosen by the heavens this time. A sharp light flashed through Han Nan's eyes. Although it was only for a brief moment, Yi Zichen still caught it. Creak! Yi Zichen's feet suddenly pushed against the ground, and the chair he was sitting on was pushed back by half a meter. The wheels of the chair left a long black mark on the floor, which was especially conspicuous on the stone floor of the room. He who was sitting on the chair immediately stood up. His eyes were filled with seriousness, and all the muscles on his body were completely tense. When he saw his intense reaction, Han Nan couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Little friend Yi, please relax. We have no ill intentions towards you. All right, since you don't have any hostility, please send me back. At the same time, he glanced at Yang Jian. Send me back. Yi Zichen couldn't be sure whether or not the outsiders held any enmity towards him. However, he knew that they really did know he had celestial fate. From Yi Zichen's point of view, staying here was far too dangerous. What was even more embarrassing was that he did not even have the most basic ability to protect himself. Yang Jian, send me back. Yi Zichen practically roared. His chest heaved violently. Yang Jian, who was in the room, didn't know why there was such a big reaction just now. He subconsciously glanced at Han Nan and Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen saw that Han Nan hadn't moved. Then I'll go by myself. Just as he was about to move, the gorgeous office suddenly turned into a prison cell surrounded by fences. Yi Zichen was pressed back on the chair, while his hands and feet were shackled with chains. Han Nan stared at him expressionlessly, like a judge. Meanwhile, Yang Jian, who'd been in the room this entire time, had disappeared. Little friend, please calm down, said Han Nan. Yi Zichen tried to break free, but he was too weak to budge the chains in the slightest. Mayor Han, what's the meaning of this? Earlier, you said you needed my help. Is this how you asked for help? Yi Zichen looked at the chains in his hands. Little friend Yi, do you think we need to kneel and beg you? Don't forget, this is the outside. I just want you to calm down a little, said Han Nan. If you've calmed down, you can tell me and I'll let you go. The situation was clear. Han Nan was using the most direct method to tell Yi Zichen that this was the outside. Even if they were the ones asking for help, they were still the outside. They were the only faction that had transcended the laws, so he'd best behave himself. As expected, Yi Zichen was unyielding. Yi Zichen wasn't someone who didn't know how to adapt to circumstances. He repeatedly reminded himself that this was the outside. Even if he refused to submit, he was still a Sky Supreme. He wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between Han Nan's teeth. After a long silence, Yi Zichen said, "Let me go. Little friend Yi, have you calmed down? Let me go." When he saw Yi Zichen's gaze, Han Nan clapped his hands. The gloomy cell transformed back into an office, and Yi Zichen sat back down in his chair. Little friend Yi, let me apologize. I had no choice but to do what I did just now. Please don't take offense, said Han Nan with an apologetic smile. As for how fake that smile was, Yi Zichen had no interest in commenting on it. He leaned back in his chair, arched his brows, and sighed. Then he licked his teeth. Tell me, why exactly did you bring me here? What do you want me to help you with? However, I have to make it clear that I won't do anything too dangerous. I value my life a lot, but sometimes I don't. If you force me to do something I don't want to do, you can kill me right here and now. He had to make things clear. Yi Zichen knew full well that his strength was insignificant in the outside, and he was nothing more than an ant in front of Han Nan. But even an ant had its dignity. Besides, Yi Zichen had never seen himself look down on an ant before. He could help, but if they went too far, for example, if they wanted his celestial fate, would Yi Zichen just happily offer it to them? If he lived such a cowardly life, he might as well die. Through Yi Zichen's gaze, Han Nen could sense that he was unafraid of death. Little friend Yi, you're being too serious. Han Nen gently rapped his knuckles on the table to ease the tense atmosphere. Of course we wouldn't ask you to do anything too dangerous, nor would we do anything to harm you. In truth, asking you for help is as easy as lifting a finger. As easy as lifting a finger? Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. If it really was as easy as lifting a finger, he could have just said it. Was there really a need to beat around the bush? Was there even a need to threaten him? Of course, for you, it's as easy as lifting a finger. Han Cheng repeated himself to confirm Yi Zichen's suspicions. Yi Zichen couldn't help but wonder what exactly Han Cheng wanted from him. Then tell me, if it really is as easy as lifting a finger, I naturally won't refuse. Chapter 1330. The Terminator, did he drink fake wine? Yi Zichen looked at Han Nan's sincere expression, and his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. A single era lasted 129,600,000 years. That represented the beginning and end of this era. When this era ended, everything would be destroyed. It would be like the end of the world. No one would be able to escape destruction. After that, the world would be rebuilt, and a new cycle would begin. Emperor Hades had told him all of this, and he knew that the world they lived in was about to come to an end. As a result, the Yao race, demon race, and God race that had been silent for too long began to make some movements. It was all for the sake of being able to be like the outer realms now, transcending the rules and becoming an independent world before the end of this era. The gods, Yao, and demons wanted to learn from the outside. What the heck? Han Nen had actually asked him to help the outer realms. Mayor Han, are you joking with me? Asked Yi Zichen. No, I know exactly what I'm talking about, said Han Nen solemnly. Before that, I'd like to ask you to take a look at this. The space in front of him distorted. When the space around him reformed, Yi Zichen found himself in a desolate wasteland. As far as the eye could see, the sky was a deathly gray. The first thing he saw was a vast expanse of withered yellow. The dry earth was riddled with deep ravines. Fierce winds howled, and yellow sand filled the air. At this moment, the entire ground began to tremble violently. Before long, a giant beast that looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared in the distance. It was over 10,000 feet tall, and behind it was a horde of enormous beasts. Following their gaze, Yi Zichen could see that they were headed toward the barrier of light. Roar! The Tyrannosaurus Rex roared, and the scene changed once more. It was still the same desolate wildland, but this time the ground was littered with the corpses of humans and beasts. The living clutched the dead and wept bitterly. The injured were rushed to be treated. However, Yi Zichen noticed that a few tiny cracks had appeared in the barrier of light that enveloped the continent. The scene in front of him returned to the interior of his office. For some reason, even though he hadn't personally experienced this calamity, his chest still heaved violently. Even now, he could not forget the disdainful gaze of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. That earth-shattering roar still made him a little absent-minded. Little friend Yi, did you see that? Han Nen said bitterly. By now, he was no longer as calm and composed as before. Yi Zichen looked at his bitter expression and nodded. Where did those wild beasts come from? They're way too big. These are ancient giant beasts, Han Nen said. They also have another name. I believe this name will be more intuitive to you, little friend Yi. Terminators. Yi Zichen already knew their identities without any further explanation. The end of an era should be carried out by them. The image of the Tyrannosaurus King's towering body involuntarily appeared in his mind. It was tens of thousands of meters tall, and both humans and demons were as tiny as ants in front of it. Its howl seemed as if it could shatter heaven and earth itself. Yi Zichen's heart was filled with faint terror. How could he possibly defeat a Terminator like that? The gods, Yao, and demons most likely had no idea what they were about to face. If they did, who knew how they'd feel? However, the outside had already transcended the laws. Yi Zichen suppressed his anxiety and thought back to Han Nan's request. That barrier of light. Yes, it's exactly as you think. That barrier of light surrounds this place, said Han Nan, as he pointed at his feet. But didn't you already transcend? Why are those primordial beasts still attacking you? That shouldn't be the case, right? When you transcended, you must have escaped from those beasts as well. Why are you looking for me now? Asked Yi Zichen. Han Nan smiled bitterly, then shook his head when he saw Yi Zichen's confused expression. In truth, you've always had a strange feeling about us. We did survive from the previous era, but that doesn't mean our world won't be destroyed. In truth, ever since that era, we've always faced attacks from those primordial beasts. It's just that when the Star Emperor was around, the defenses he established allowed us to completely ignore their attacks. But a few hundred years ago, somewhere remote and uninhabited, within a cave in a mountain range, countless ripples of light surrounded the cave, and roughly 20 people sat inside. There were men and women, as well as Yao, demons, and even gods. I called you all here. In truth, you should already know what I'm going to say, right? The speaker was a cloaked demon expert. When they looked closely, they saw that he was the demon emperor, Kuei Lin. The others in the cave were all famous figures of the god, Yao, and demon realms. They were either the heads of peak-level clans or the leaders of peak-level factions. It was fair to say that nearly half of the god, Yao, and demon realms' top experts were gathered here. I know. I heard the outsiders are here, said a graceful woman. The outsiders haven't appeared in hundreds of millions of years. Why would they suddenly show up here? Do they want to interfere with our era's affairs? Snorted another man. Since those outsiders have already transcended, why are they still causing trouble here? Everyone angrily rebuked the extraterrestrials' actions. Even though Yang Jian didn't do anything after he appeared, his appearance had indeed thrown them into a state of confusion. It doesn't matter what the outsiders are here for. Right now, the question is whether or not we should continue. If this continues, won't the outer realms affect our plans? The demon emperor muttered to himself in silence. As he listened to the different opinions of the people around him, he felt vexed. After a long time, he looked at a young man not too far away from him. Shouting, didn't you say you had something to tell us? Wait a moment. I've already sent someone to look for Xiao Hu. He might be able to explain what I want to say more clearly. At that moment, a ripple of energy rippled through the cave. The people inside raised their guard and looked at the entrance of the cave. Soon, they saw Xiao Hu, who was still wrapped in bandages, walk in from outside. Xiao Hu was slightly taken aback when he saw the people in front of him. Xiao Hu, tell them what you told me you discovered in the outside, said Xiao Ting. The outside? The expressions of the people around them changed, and the way they looked at Xiao Hu also changed. Chapter 1331. Danger in the outside. After learning that Xiao Hu had been to the outside, their gazes softened somewhat. Who were these people? They were leaders in their respective domains, with countless rulers under their command. A minor figure like Li Hu, who'd just become a ruler, wasn't qualified to join their circle. But if he'd been to the outside, things were different. None of them had actually been there before. From Xiao Ting's tone, it was clear that not only had Xiao Hu survived the outside, but he'd also received information about the outside. Xiao Ting's decision to let him speak here was clearly beneficial to them. Emperor, said Xiao Hu hesitantly. Not long ago, he'd received word from Xiao Ting that he needed to hurry here. At the time, he'd wondered why the Emperor had sent him to such a remote place. But because it was an order from the Emperor, he didn't dare hesitate. Even though his injuries hadn't fully healed, he rushed here as fast as he could. But now that he was here, what kind of people did he see? Yao and demons. After fighting Yao and demons for so many years, Xiao couldn't possibly be mistaken about their auras. He stared at Xiao Ting in astonishment. He couldn't understand why the emperor would associate himself with outsiders. When they saw Xiao Hu's hesitation, the Yao and demon experts all looked displeased. Xiao Ting's expression darkened, and he rebuked Xiao Hu. "Hurry up and speak." Even in the face of the emperor's furious roar, Xiao Hu hung his head and said nothing. He couldn't understand why the emperor, who'd once hated Yao and demons so much, would associate himself with these people. Ever since 100 years ago, the emperor's behavior had been bizarre and bizarre. He'd always had a black-robed woman by his side. He paid no attention to the family's affairs. When family members asked about the woman's identity, all they got in return was a thunderous scolding from the emperor. After that, Xiaoyan had sent people to investigate. They'd learned that the woman was the holy maiden of the demons. Only the family's immediate higher-ups knew about this. At the time, Xiao hadn't believed it. He'd been one of the first to follow the emperor in his conquest of the world. He couldn't believe that the emperor would associate himself with demons. But now, not only were there demons and Yao present, but there were also a few peak powers from other divine mountains who wielded absolute power. Why would this group of people gather together at this time? Could it be that the old divine emperor was also participating in the attack on the Shin clan? He didn't believe it. He absolutely did not believe it. "Are you going to tell me or not?" Xiao Ting's face turned red with anger at Xiao Hu's silence. Around his body, one could vaguely see the power of lightning, flickering like a dragon or a snake. Even the surrounding experts could sense Xiao Ting's imposing aura. Although he had stepped down from his position as the lightning's sovereign emperor, his cultivation realm was still astonishing. "Old Xiao, why are you so angry?" Kuei Lin chuckled and patted Xiao Ting on the shoulder. Kuei Lin's consolation actually calmed Xiao Ting down. Xiao Hu's pupils constricted. "Since your people don't want to tell us, it's the same if you tell us. We're all on the same boat. How can we not believe you?" "Monarch, you can't say it." Xiao Hu, who was immersed in shock, immediately shouted when he heard this. "Shut up." A bolt of lightning slammed into Xiao Hu. Xiao Ting's heavy injuries had yet to heal, so he coughed up a mouthful of blood and slumped to the ground, his face pale. He clutched his chest and coughed up blood. He stared at Xiao Ting, his eyes filled with anxiety. He couldn't say it. He'd risked his life to obtain this information for the Xiao family, for the god race. He couldn't share it with the other races. But Xiao Ting said it. "All right, then I'll explain it to my colleagues. I originally wanted Xiao Hu to tell you. He experienced it himself, so he'd be more detailed than me. I never would have guessed this dog would be so disobedient. I made a fool of myself." Xiao Ting smiled apologetically and nodded at the surrounding experts. They all looked at him as if it didn't matter. They didn't care about the Xiao family's internal affairs. What they cared about was the situation in the outside. "You all know about the Xin Yuan sword appearing before the new year, right?" Everyone nodded. When the Xin Yuan sword appeared, all the realms sent their elites to fight for it, but in the end, they all returned empty-handed. That's when he went to the outside. He almost lost his life there, but fortunately, he was lucky. Fortunately, he was lucky enough to find a black hole and come back. Afterwards, he told me and Xiao Yin about the outside. "What did he say?" asked everyone. "He saw primordial behemoths invading the outside. You might not know what they are, but they're the Terminators. They're the race that brought an end to this era. That's what the Xiao family's ancient records say. The outside was attacked by primordial behemoths, so we can roughly determine that the Master of the Stars is dead. The Master of the Stars is dead." The outsider Han Nan's eyes were bloodshot and filled with grief. "You saw yourself. Without the Master of the Stars support, we can't replenish the barrier's energy. Every round of attacks from the primordial behemoths causes cracks to appear in the barrier. Even though we've sent people to stop them before they attack, the primordial behemoths are too strong for us to handle. There are fewer and fewer of us who can truly fight against the ancient beasts, but it seems like the ancient beasts won't die. One day, the barrier will break, and when it does, we'll be destroyed." Han Nan's grief was clear as day. If the outside wanted to survive, They had to send people to stop the primordial behemoths every time they attacked. His son had died in the last round. Not even his corpse was left behind. That's right. The outsiders were born supremes, but the primordial behemoths were rulers and above. Even though this was the outside, the number of rulers they had was limited. He didn't know how much longer they could hold out like this. A few days ago, the Master of the Star Sun said he received a prophecy from the Master of the Stars. If the outside wants to survive, we need your help. Little friend Yi, please help us in the outer realm escape. I, Han Nan, will never forget your great kindness. Xiao Ting didn't hide anything. Kneeling on the ground, Xiao Hu slammed his head against the ground as if he'd collapsed. Brother Xiao, that means. Kuei Lin and the others' eyes lit up. Xiao Ting chuckled. Chapter 1332. The prerequisites for transcendence rumor had it that the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family was the race with the deepest foundations. Many peak-level clans had scoffed at this rumor, but now they believed it. The Terminators were primordial beasts. The only prerequisites for transcendence were the Master of the Stars. None of their clans had even heard of the things Xiao Ting had just told them. Emperor, Xiao Hu buried his head in the ground and clenched his fists. Why was it like this? Why had the old emperor become like this? He'd called the demons and Yao brothers, and he'd revealed all of the Xiao family secrets. This was information not even the God Emperor had shared with them. Why did he have to share it with them? Xiao Hu had long since fallen apart. They were all absorbed in what Xiao Ting had just told them. Brother Xiao, is the Master of the Stars you speak of the Emperor's star? Asked Kuei Lin. That's right. Xiao Ting nodded. According to legend, the Emperor's star of every era selects a master, and the Master of the Stars is the person most likely to succeed in bringing this era to the next. When the first era was on the verge of destruction, it was the Master of the Emperor's star who helped them transcend, creating the outside. Then the second era. In truth, the second era transcended as well, but they didn't succeed. Xiao Ting narrowed his eyes. The Dragon God's 9 sons, by Janya, the head of the 9-tailed fox clan, and you, Kuei Lin, didn't you all survive the second era? Kuei Lin's gaze darkened, and he looked at Xiao Ting solemnly. No one knew about this. They'd all survived the second era, and they'd only appeared in the middle of the third era. Some people survived, and that counts as success. Not all of you survived, because your era's Master of the Stars was forced to become a star in order to seal the Demon Emperor. That's why a small number of you survived. Isn't that right? In response to Xiao Ting's words, Kuei Lin's expression shifted for a long while. Then he smiled. Brother Xiao, you've hidden your strength far better than I imagined. But we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to transcend this era. Since you've said it, I won't hide it any longer. I admit that I'm indeed from the second era. With Kuei Lin's confirmation, the news could be considered true. The others stared at Kuei Lin in a daze. They'd never imagined that someone from the second era would exist in this era. Xiao Hu did the same. Gradually, he no longer resented Xiao Ting for revealing everything. Instead, he lay quietly on the ground and listened carefully. Since Brother Xiao knows so much, then does Brother Xiao know who this era's Master of Stars is? It's me. An arrogant chuckle suddenly sounded in the cave. Everyone looked towards the entrance of the cave and found that the cloaked man had appeared in front of them without them noticing. He slowly walked towards the crowd, then took off the hood of his cloak, revealing a sunny face. I am this era's Master of Stars. Compared to his previous unyielding attitude, Han Nan almost knelt on the ground after revealing everything. Yi Zichen stared blankly ahead. He found it hard to digest their conversation just now. The Star-Lord was dead. The Outer Realm was in danger. The son of the Star-Lord received a prophecy from the deceased Star-Lord that he could save the Outer Realms from disaster. Am I the savior of the world? Yi Zichen asked himself. He absolutely wasn't. He'd done everything he could to increase his strength, but in truth, all he wanted was to return to the modern realm with the people he loved. That's what he'd always thought, but now he knew that this era was coming to an end. He naturally didn't want to return to the modern realm, only to die shortly after his era ended. He'd watched helplessly as the primordial beast devoured his brothers, friends, lovers, and loved ones. He naturally didn't want to die either. What should I do? Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. You agree? Han Nan's eyes lit up. When he saw Han Nan's excitement, Yi Zichen couldn't bear to discourage him, but he also didn't want to give him too much hope. If I can help you, I'll do my best. But don't get your hopes up. Whether or not I can fix this era is another matter. If I help you, never mind, just tell me what I should do. Transcend, said Han Nan in a low voice. Yi Zichen froze. So long as you break through to the level of ruler and transcend, your era will transcend the laws. The power of transcendence is beyond imagination. So long as you don't die. The primordial beasts can't affect your era in the slightest, said Han Nan solemnly. What the hell was this guy talking about? Transcend? Did he even need to say that? Yi Zichen naturally knew the power of transcendence was unimaginable. That was a level above rulers. How could not be fierce? What he wanted to know was how to transcend. Transcendence was no easy feat. Just look at the upper three realms. Peak rulers were everywhere, but no one had transcended after so many years. Even if he was the Emperor's star, he couldn't just transcend just because he wanted to, but Han Nan and the others probably didn't know what to do either. If they did, they wouldn't need him. It seemed he'd have to rely on his own wits and slowly figure things out. We can help you transcend, Han Nan spoke up at that moment. The room instantly fell incomparably silent. In such a secluded environment, even the sound of breathing was ear-piercing. Yi Zichen glared at Han Nan. You know how to transcend? Han Nan nodded. Yi Zichen was speechless. Then why did you come looking for me? If you know how to transcend, hurry up and find someone with a higher cultivation. I'm just a Sky Supreme. Who knows how long it'll take for me to transcend? My era is about to end, and your era won't last much longer either. Am I supposed to cultivate slowly? By the time I reach that level, I'll have destroyed the fourth era long ago. They can't. Han Nan shook his head. Your Yao, Demon, and God Emperors are all peak rulers. Who knows how long they've been stuck at that level? Given their talents, they'd have taken that step long ago. But have you seen any of them transcend? There's a prerequisite for transcendence. Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. Han Nan nodded. That's right. The prerequisite is celestial fate, and it's the Emperor Star's celestial fate. Isn't Zhou Wu also good? He has celestial fate, and he's the closest to transcending. So long as you get in touch with him, given his personality, he'll be more than happy to work with you. When the time comes, you can use whatever conditions you want to restrict him. All right, once he transcends, he'll no longer be restricted. Could it be that you don't want to talk to him because you think his character isn't good enough? Yi Zichen arched his brows. That's one of them. Han Nan nodded non-committally. But there's another thing. Transcendence requires a celestial fate chosen by the Emperor's star. He stole the celestial fate of the 5 elements and thought he could take that final step, but alas. Chapter 1333. My surname is Gu, and my name is Lai. As soon as Han Nan said this, a fierce gust of wind blew outside his window. The plants outside swayed in the wind. Han Nan sat behind his desk, his gaze filled with disdain. This disdain was directed at God Emperor Zhou Wu, and at his wishful thinking of stealing celestial fate in order to transcend. Zhou Wu's fate had been decided the moment he was born. No matter how much he struggled, no matter how much he schemed to defy the heavens and change his fate, it was all in vain. Han Nan's confident tone made Yi Zichen's heart tremble. In terms of cultivation, Han Nan might not even be as strong as Zhou Wu, but he was confident that he could crush Zhou Wu's dreams. He wasn't fated to transcend. No, he wasn't. That wasn't all. Yi Zichen also sensed a hint of hostility in Han Nan's eyes. If he wasn't mistaken, this hostility was directed at Zhou Wu. The two of them weren't from the same world. Han Nan lived in the first era, while Zhou Wu lived in the third era. Yi Zichen had sensed why Han Nan treated Zhou Wu like this from the very beginning, when Han Nan said Zhou Wu had stolen the 5 elements planet's fate. Han Nan was the first era's Emperor Star's auxiliary star. As for what kind of auxiliary star he was, I'm not sure. Furthermore, I heard that the first era's Master of the Stars died 100 years ago because someone had stolen the Emperor Star's fate. Even though that person died, as an auxiliary star, Han Nan and the others couldn't tolerate someone like that appearing. When Yi Zichen heard this, his eyes widened. He couldn't help but come to a sudden realization. Earlier, he'd wondered how a master of the stars could possibly die after transcending. To think someone had stolen their celestial fate. Having their celestial fate stolen had directly affected the outside's transcendence. Now, the outside had no choice but to ask him for help. God Emperor Zhou Wu had stolen the Five Elements planet's fate to become the God Emperor. That was why Han Nan was so hostile towards him. Zhou Wu was truly pitiful. He'd schemed to steal celestial fate, and he'd even left his heart in the time corridor. Yet, he still couldn't take that final step. What's more, the outside didn't view him particularly kindly. When Yi Zichen obtained the Five Elements' Great Emperor's inheritance, the Five Elements' Great Emperor had asked him to avenge him. Yi Zichen had never forgotten it, but the God Emperor's position was too high, so he could only bury it in the depths of his heart. But now, if he could pull in the outer realms, he felt that there was a chance. However, even if they were to really deal with the God Emperor, all of this was a matter for the future. The Third Era was about to come to an end. The primordial beasts needed experts at the God Emperor's level to defend the Third Era before Yi Zichen transcended. Mayor Han. The moment Yi Zichen spoke up. Don't call me Mayor Han. If you don't mind, you can call me Old Han or Uncle Han. To tell you the truth, I'm actually the assistant star of the current Planet Lord. When I see you, I can't help but think of the Planet Lord back then, Han Nan said with a bitter smile. Yi Zichen arched his brows. He hadn't expected Han Nan to be one of the Emperor Star's auxiliary stars. The Assistant Star's position among the stars was not low. The Assistant Star's mission was to assist the Left Assistant Star in assisting the Emperor Star. According to ancient times, this would be the assistant of the Prime Minister, a third-rank official. If he was in the modern world, he would be the Secretary General of the Prime Minister. At first, Yi Zichen thought Han Nan was just a small fry among the stars, but now, the Outer Realms still valued him quite a bit. Of course, they didn't treat him with absolute importance. Otherwise, the Left Assistant Star would have come to see him in person. Yi Zichen loved being able to worm his way into a good relationship. Uncle Han, how do I transcend? Time waits for no man. I'm only a Sky Supreme right now. Although I'm about to become a diviner, there's still a ruler above me. That'll take me countless years to reach. Although my talent isn't bad, if I keep cultivating slowly, I'm afraid I won't be able to transcend before the end of the era. When he saw Yi Zichen's hesitant expression, his eyes flashed with a dark light. How could Han Nan, who'd lived for several eras, not understand what he was trying to say? That's true. Then how about I infuse you with wisdom and help you become a ruler? Yi Zichen's eyes instantly lit up. That's great. If you can help me become a ruler, I'll be able to shorten the distance between transcendence. After that, I'll focus on cultivation. It's not like transcendence is impossible. Before he finished speaking, Yi Zichen saw Han Nan's smile grow wider and wider. His excitement immediately subsided. He'd gotten excited for nothing. Han Nan had been joking with him all along. Yi Zichen pursed his lips. He'd been thinking about becoming a ruler and opening the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Then, with the Xinyuan sword and the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he'd be able to do whatever he wanted on the Divine Mountains. When that happened, what about the God Emperor Zhou Wu, the Demon Emperor Kuei Lin, the Yao Emperor Tai? They'd all be little brothers. But Han Nan was just joking with him. None of that was going to happen. You're trying to bait me. Just tell me. When he saw Yi Zichen's dejected expression, Han Nan couldn't help but chuckle. In truth, you've misunderstood the concept of transcendence. Transcendence is above rulers. Isn't that the case? Yi Zichen arched his brows. Of course it is. Transcendence is naturally much stronger than rulers. But that doesn't mean you have to break through from ruler. Transcendence. You could transcend at any level. When the cloak was lifted, a particularly handsome and delicate face was revealed. His entire body was wrapped in a loose cloak, but everyone could see that he had no right arm. At the diviner level, regrowing a severed arm wasn't difficult. This youth was at least a late-stage diviner, yet he hadn't regrown his arm. They couldn't help but find this strange. Losing an arm would have a huge impact on one's formation, hand seals, and combat. However, they were more concerned about what he'd just said. What did you just say? Kuei Lin stared intently at the youth. I'm this era's master of the stars. Before he finished speaking, a disk of stars appeared in the youth's left hand and circled around his palm. During this period of time, there were even people who looked outside. When the astrolabe appeared, the North Star also flashed as if it was responding to it. At the same time, everyone within the cave sensed a faint pressure. This pressure came from a young man in front of him. After all, they were peerless experts who stood at the peak of the world. Every single one of them was a high-level ruler or above. This is the power of the stars. One of the Yao experts couldn't help but frown. This pressure is coming from the stars of the 9 heavens. This youth really was this era's master of the stars. Everyone looked at the youth solemnly. Kuei Lin stared intently at him. I seem to have seen you somewhere before. You're a member of the demon race. Chapter 1334. And Lu, even though the people standing before them were all experts who could shake the entire 3 realms with a single stomp of their feet, Guli still stood before them. He looked them straight in the eye, neither servile nor overbearing. Furthermore, when he introduced himself, he called himself this humble one, not this junior. He placed himself on equal footing with them. In fact, he even felt like he was a bit higher than them. He smiled faintly, looked around, then walked up to the center of the bonfire and sat down. When they saw him sit down, they couldn't help but glance at Demon Emperor Kuei Lin. Guli had taken his seat. Guli, I remember now. You're the kid with the Chi-Yu sword. Kuei Lin didn't get angry right away. Instead, he nodded. Then his gaze darkened, and he looked at Guli, his gaze suffocating. You say you're the master of the stars, and I believe 60% of it. But do you know who you are? Do you know who these people are? Do you know who you're talking to? Do you know what tone of voice you're using? Do you know that? Killing you would be as easy as crushing an ant. Shut up, will you? Guli suddenly berated him. Kuei Lin's expression darkened, and the atmosphere in the cave grew heavy. Under this pressure, the other experts couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Guli sat in his chair, his face wreathed in a calm smile. Even in front of Demon Emperor Kuei Lin, his expression was as calm as ever. I don't know who you are, and I don't need to know. I don't care to know. All I need to know is that I'm this era's master of the stars. That's enough. Who are you talking to? Do you know who you're talking to? But if a puny demon emperor dares to speak to the master of the stars like that, you'll be the first one I kill after I transcend. Do you think you're fit to talk to me like that? Kuei Lin's face was ashen. He was on the verge of exploding. The onlookers were flabbergasted. To say nothing of anything else, this youth's courage was enough to subdue the other experts. Find your place. Don't think that just because you're the demon emperor you're amazing. In my eyes, you're nothing. Do you understand? You're courting death. Even if you're a Star-Lord, I'll grant you your wish. He swung his fist at Guli, but when his fist, which seemed capable of shattering mountains and shattering moons, landed on Guli's body, it passed right through. Guli's body contorted as he sat in his chair. Before long, he returned to his original state. Soul body. The mighty figures in the cave were stunned. None of them had noticed that this was a soul body. Kuei Lin frowned. Like the other experts, he hadn't sensed anything at all. He retracted his fist, narrowed his eyes into slits, and snorted with a livid face. No wonder he dares to be so impudent. It's just a spiritual body. You can tell if it's a spirit body or not. If you didn't make a move, would any of you be able to tell that this is a spiritual body? Guli's eyes were still filled with amusement. I don't have time to waste on you. My goal here is simple. You want to survive, and I'm this era's master of the stars. We can work together. Regardless of what happened earlier, Guli's words hit the nail on the head. They wanted to survive. If it wasn't for the end of an era, these people wouldn't have gathered together. They all wanted to survive in this destroyed era. The Demon Emperor's gaze was as dark as ever. Guli's words had thoroughly infuriated him. The others glanced between the two of them, then couldn't help but try to comfort them. Brother Kuei Lin, let's listen to what he has to say. Even if he resented the Demon Emperor, Kuei Lin couldn't deny that he wanted to survive. He'd survived the Second Era, so he knew full well that only the Master of the Stars could lead this era to transcendence. Since someone had given him a way out of this embarrassing situation, he snorted coldly. His meaning was clear. When they saw the Demon Emperor back down, the others sighed in relief. Then, the graceful woman in the middle of the group smiled. "Little brother Master of the Stars, what do you think we should do? You seem to be only at the diviner level. We don't have much time left in this era. Do you want us to capture a few people and give them to you then?" "There's no need," interrupted Ghoulie coldly. Ghoulie cut her off coldly. "Just continue what you're doing. As for how to transcend, I'll tell you later. When the time comes, I might need your help, but I might not." The others couldn't help but knit their brows. Ghoulie's words were so confusing that they couldn't even fathom what he was trying to say. "Then what about working together?" asked one of the Yao experts hesitantly. "I'm here to say hello to you. Whether or not I want to work with you depends on the Demon Emperor." Everyone looked at the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor knit his brows. "Speak. Release and Lu. So long as you let her go, I'll agree to work with you. Once I transcend, I'll definitely give you a place to work with me," said Ghoulie, glaring at them. Kuei Lin smiled coldly and roared. "Kid, don't push your luck. Brat, don't push your luck." He'd only asked to release one person, yet the Demon Emperor had reacted so strongly. The surrounding experts couldn't help but be astonished. Ghoulie, on the other hand, stared at Kuei Lin sternly, refusing to budge an inch. They couldn't help but wonder just who Lu was. How could the Demon Emperor and the Master of the Stars care so much about her? "Release Lu, and I'll stand on your side," said Ghoulie, his gaze unwavering. "Kid, don't think too highly of yourself. Don't think I don't know that the heavens chose two emperors. You've only taken less than half of the celestial fate. Whether or not you can become the Master of the Stars is still up in the air. What right do you have to negotiate with me? What right do you have? Even without you, we can always find another. It seems you know quite a bit." Ghoulie's expression didn't change in the face of Kuei Lin's accusation. As expected, someone who survived the Second Era is extraordinary. To put it bluntly, you gathered so many people to attack the god race because of Zhou Wu's celestial fate, right? Kuei Lin said nothing. "Even if you don't say it, I know what you're thinking. It seems you know that transcendence requires the Emperor Star's celestial fate. You tried to kill me just now because you wanted to seize my celestial fate and transcend for yourself, didn't you? That's not a bad idea, but your thinking is too simple. Zhou Wu has had the Emperor Star's celestial fate for tens of thousands of years. Has he ever taken that step? In terms of talent, do you think he's any worse than you, Kuei Lin? Why can't he take that step? Have you never thought about it?" Ghoulie's disdainful laughter reverberated in Kuei Lin's ears, but his expression changed dramatically. He stared intently at Ghoulie, who was still smiling. At the same time, Ghoulie spoke. "Are you going to release Lu or not? Think about it. But if you don't, and I transcend, the first person to die will definitely be you. Are you threatening me?" Kuei Lin's expression darkened. "She's in my hands. You need to think this through." "Of course I know." Ghoulie nodded non-committally, but when he mentioned Lu, his eyes turned bloodshot. "But you need to think this through. Are I threatening you or not?" He twisted his neck, rose to his feet, walked up to the Demon Emperor, and patted him on the shoulder. His scarlet eyes glanced at him coolly. Chapter 1335. This was Transcendence. Accompanied by a gust of wind, his soul body slowly dissipated in front of everyone's eyes. The experts in the cave looked at Kuei Lin. Just now, Ghoulie had made it clear that Kuei Lin was the one to decide whether or not he wanted to work with them. Not only that, but from their conversation just now, they knew that Kuei Lin was hiding many things from them. Cracks began to appear in the alliance that had once trusted each other. Most of the people here were selfish. Otherwise, they wouldn't have betrayed their own clans for the sake of their own interests. Kuei Lin's concealment made them a bit more apprehensive, but no one was willing to shed all pretense of cordiality in a situation like this. If they wanted to survive this new era, they needed to rely on the youth from before. Kuei Lin held the absolute right to negotiate. "Demon Emperor, After a long moment of silence, a rough-looking man with green eyes and a full beard broke the silence. We won't ask too many questions. We can pretend we didn't hear what you just said. All we care about is transcendence. If you still want to maintain our alliance, I suggest that you hand that Enlu over to that young man, just now. That's right. We're all gathered here for the sake of transcendence, right? Demon Emperor, all you have to do is hand over Enlu to that youth. The others also spoke up as if they were grasping at straws of life. This could indeed be counted as their life-saving straw. No one could escape the end of an era. Now that the Master of the Stars had taken the initiative to cooperate with them, what reason did they have to refuse? Furthermore, the Master of the Stars didn't seem like a good person. They didn't believe that the youth would help them escape their doom for no reason. All he wanted was one person. So what if he gave her up? All of you shut up. To their surprise, the Demon Emperor roared, his aura surging like a wild beast's. His shout made the other allies stop trying to persuade him, but it also wore away the last vestiges of their patience. In an instant, the gazes of the people in the cave changed. They stared coldly at Kuei Lin. After his roar, Kuei Lin sensed the others' gazes and suddenly understood. These people were the leaders of their respective realms. They weren't subordinates he could casually scold. We can still maintain our alliance in the near future, but the outcome will depend on your choice. Demon Emperor, good luck. After glancing at the Demon Emperor, the bearded man left the cave. They were all clan leaders or leaders of top-notch forces. Previously, they had lowered their stance slightly to give the Demon Emperor some face. After all, he was one of the 3 great emperors. It was just that their modesty seemed to have caused the Demon Emperor to forget his original position. In terms of status, they were actually equal. Some of the others left, while others stayed behind. The Demon Emperor sat in front of the bonfire with a sullen expression. He looked at the burning flames and fell into deep thought. If Guli had asked for anyone else, he might have agreed. But why did he want Enlu of all people? Enlu was a woman of the devil race and was born with the heavenly devil soul body. A heavenly demon soul body would not appear for hundreds of millions of years. Even a demon emperor would not be able to obtain a heavenly demon soul body. In order to capture her, Kuei Lin had schemed and plotted against her clan in secret. He'd even massacred her entire clan. So long as he could obtain Zhou Wu's celestial fate and devour Enlu's heavenly demon soul body, he'd be able to take another step forward. Perhaps, after taking that step, he'd transcend. Why did Guli have to want her? Even now, Kuei Lin didn't want to let her go. He didn't care about his allies who'd left. As long as he could take the step of transcendence, everyone else would be useless. I almost forgot to tell you, said Guli. At that moment, Guli's soul body reformed in the cave. The remaining experts didn't say a word, but Guli looked around and smiled. It seems there's been a disagreement among you. That's fine. I came here to help you resolve your differences. Kuei Lin, are you still thinking that even without me, you could always find another Master of the Stars? Let me tell you, that Master of the Stars hates you demons the most. Then Gu Li's expression shifted. He glanced at the sinister-looking man next to him. And your flying serpent clan. His gaze fell on Shao Ting and your Shao family. After pointing out these clans, Guli crossed his arms and snorted. And the rest of you? Based on my understanding of that guy, he hates anyone who betrays his own clans. If you want to transcend, your only hope is me. Help me seize celestial fate. Everything is to pave the way for me. That's the only way you'll have a chance at survival. As for whether or not you can seize this opportunity, it's all up to him. With that, Gu Li's gaze fell on Kuei Lin. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. Are you going to let Enlu go or not? If you let her go, we can talk later. If you don't, you absolutely, positively must not give me a chance to transcend. Gu Li glanced darkly at the silent Kuei Lin, then smiled and said, Don't worry. Right, let me tell you something you might not know. Transcendence doesn't mean transcending beyond ruler. True transcendence means you can transcend at any level. So long as you take that final step, you could transcend at any level. Yi Zichen looked into Han Nan's eyes and thought back to what he'd just said. He felt like his brain wasn't enough to process everything. What did Han Nan mean just now? Transcendence didn't require you to reach the ruler realm. You could transcend at any level. Didn't that mean even at the spiritual body level, you could become a transcendent expert? Uncle Han, what you just said, that's your misunderstanding of transcendence. You might think that transcendence is the highest realm and that you have to cultivate step by step. But in reality, transcendence's true meaning is to truly break free from the shackles of the laws. Han Nan's words opened a new chapter in Yi Zichen's life. He listened intently, afraid to miss even a single word. From a supreme to a diviner, from a diviner to a ruler. At the end of the day, all of this is within the boundaries of the laws. But transcendence is to break free from the laws. To put it simply, cultivation is a framework. You advance step by step according to that framework. Transcendence is to break free from that framework. As he explained, Han Nan continued to draw on the table. Through his drawings and his explanation, Yi Zichen could say that he truly understood the chill of transcendence. It was like the laws required you to walk forward or backward, but that was all the laws could control. Transcendence was to walk left or right. Once you took that step, you would no longer be bound by the laws. Chapter 1336. Chapter 1336. The Fox Clan intervenes. Take that step. Yi Zichen rested his chin on his hand and fell silent. Han Nan didn't want to disturb him. Yi Zichen's understanding of transcendence had opened a whole new door. He stared at Han Nan in astonishment, his gaze lingering on the diagram he'd drawn and the stroke he'd just drawn. He hadn't guessed transcendence was like this. Based on Han Nan's diagram, transcendence was relatively easy. All he had to do was take a single step to the side, and he'd succeeded. However, true transcendence wasn't that easy. So long as one was alive, they were bound by the laws. Transcendence required breaking the shackles of the laws. Rather than saying it was jumping out of the box, it was more accurate to say it was destroying the box and jumping out. How could breaking the laws be so easy? Wow, this really is. After a while, Yi Zichen leaned back in his chair and sighed. When Han Nan saw him sigh, he chuckled. In truth, I'm just giving you a simple description. I've never transcended before, so I'm not too sure. But what I'm sure of is that the prerequisite for transcendence is that being a ruler isn't a requirement. Then the problem is, how am I supposed to take that step? It's obviously not going to be easy, said Yi Zichen helplessly. In truth, it's both easy and difficult, said Han Nan. Just say it. Steal celestial fate. The nine-tailed fox clan of the Yao realm. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed in the tranquil forest. Countless little foxes, who had yet to take human form, rested here. They leisurely frolicked in the forest, not having to worry about any natural enemies or any existences that could be dangerous to them. Here, they could live a carefree childhood, because this was where the Fox Empress lived. In front of a bamboo house, Su Qingyin smiled faintly as she watched the little foxes play in the forest. This could be considered the only joy she had left in life. She'd long since reached the peak of the ruler realm, but hadn't taken a single step forward in tens of thousands of years. After tens of thousands of years, she understood that she probably couldn't take that final step. The only thing she could do was to intimidate the other races while she was alive so that they wouldn't dare to harbor any ill intentions towards the Fox clan. The rest of the time, she could only watch the newborn members of the Fox clan and feel gratified as she watched the clan grow stronger day by day. Lil Wan, it's about time. Go. Su Qingyin smiled faintly. Then a beautiful woman walked out of the bamboo building. She was none other than Su Qingyin, the current head of the Fox clan, Su Wan. Sis, if I were to go over, I would be completely falling out with them. It would also mean that we would have to stand on Zhou Wu's side. Are you sure you want to do that? Su Wan frowned at Su Qingyin, her eyes filled with hesitation. The nine-tailed Fox clan had always maintained absolute neutrality like the four sacred clans. But this time, if she went over, it meant that they had to choose sides. Now, who said anything about standing on Zhou Wu's side? If I ask you to stand, will you stand? Su Qingyin's eyes flashed with a cold light, and Su Wan clenched her fists. She would rather die than stand on Zhou Wu's side. If it wasn't for him, How could Wu Xing have died? After Wu Xing's death, Su Qingyan had passed on her position. From that moment on, Su Wan swore that the nine-tailed fox clan would never coexist with God Emperor Zhou Wu. Sis, then what do we do? Xiao Hu isn't a member of the Xiao family. The Xiao family is Zhou Wu's dog. If we go save him, what's the difference between that and standing on Zhou Wu's side? Su Wan didn't understand. The profound pavilion is also Zhou Wu's people, but is Xianji his dog? Asked Su Qingyan. Of course not. Xianji isn't like them, said Su Wan confidently. Then that's it. Xianji, just send me a transmission telling you to go save Xiao Hu. As for why, she didn't say, but she did say that she'd come to us in the next few days. I understand. Su Wan nodded, then transformed into a beam of white light and disappeared from the bamboo building. Su Qingyan was left alone, staring at the distant stone wall. Wu Xing, you've been arrogant your entire life, but you died in such a sullen manner. Don't worry, my little sister and I will soon avenge you. As for your celestial fate, just think of it as a gift for that youth. Mayer really liked him. Just think of it as a greeting gift for your son-in-law. As she spoke, flames flickered through Su Qingyan's eyes. Gu Li's soul body vanished from the cave once more, but the shock he'd left behind was hard to conceal. He could transcend any realm, so long as he could take that final step. Kuei Lin sat in front of the bonfire and couldn't help but sigh. He was still hesitating, wondering if he should let Enlu go. As long as he obtained the God Emperor's celestial fate and Enlu's heavenly demon soul body, then he really would have a chance. Forget it. After a few moments of hesitation, the Demon Emperor seemed to have aged a few decades. A few strands of silver had appeared in his dark purple hair. In the end, he gave up. Rather than fight for that slim chance, it was better to choose a more reliable method. As he made his decision, a bitter smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He'd hesitated far too much. He was no longer willing to take risks. Had he really grown old? He smiled bitterly at his own face, illuminated by the flames, then rose to his feet. As soon as he moved, everyone's gazes converged on him. When he saw their expressions, he smiled calmly. You don't need to look at me like that. I'll let her go. The Demon Emperor is righteous. The major powers couldn't help but bow respectfully. Since the Demon Emperor had made this decision, they'd formed a connection with the Master of the Stars. All they had to do now was help the Master of the Stars transcend. When he heard their sighs of admiration, the Demon Emperor couldn't bring himself to smile. What a bunch of selfish bastards. After a brief, bitter smile, Kuei Lin composed himself and resumed his usual dignified demeanor. Everyone go back. Since Gu Li was able to find this place without anyone noticing, he'll naturally come looking for me at the Demon Emperor's palace in 3 days. Once we're done talking, I'll notify you. When the time comes, it'll be a battle for transcendence. When they heard this, they nodded. Then, their gazes fell on Xiao Hu, who was lying on the ground, then glanced at Xiao Ting. Emperor Xiao, this person is a member of your clan. What do you think we should do with him? He's heard too much, said Kuei Lin. Furthermore, he doesn't look like one of us. I suggest we kill him. But since he's one of your people, you can deal with him. We won't interfere, said Kuei Lin. Xiao Hu's expression froze. He raised his head and looked at Xiao Ting. He'd served the Xiao family all his life. Could it be? Xiao Hu, the Xiao family will treat your family well. Xiao Ting didn't hesitate at all. A small lightning dragon appeared in his palm. However, the instant his palm descended, a beam of white light appeared by his side. Everyone in the cave attacked at the same time, but the white light only lasted for a moment. Xiao Hu, who'd been lying on the ground, vanished. Su Wan. Kuei Lin's eyes widened. Then he frowned in the direction Xiao Hu had disappeared. Everyone, he growled, there's no need to delay. Return to your clans as soon as possible. It seems we'll need to bring forward the follow-up plan. Demon Emperor, can you tell us what our main objective is? Chapter 1337. An honored guest, the bamboo forest was verdant, and the bamboo leaves rustled in the wind. Su Qingyan had escorted the little fox, who'd been frolicking in the forest, somewhere else. In a moment, she'd be receiving an honored guest. Incense candles burned on the bamboo table in front of the bamboo house, filling the entire forest with their fragrance. Su Qingyan sat cross-legged on the ground, her eyes downcast. She quietly listened to the stream flowing in front of the bamboo house. Accompanied by a crisp dawn sound, she opened her eyes, a mellow smile on her lips, and stood up from the ground to look at the path in the bamboo forest. Not long after, the sound of steady footsteps could be heard in the bamboo forest. The one who walked out was a young man with a crown on his head. His eyes were sharp and fierce, and faint arcs of lightning crackled around him. He radiated an aura of righteousness and righteousness. When he emerged from the bamboo forest, he stopped. The young man stared deeply at Su Qingyan, then pulled out a piece of green bamboo and tossed it to her. "This green bamboo belongs to your fox clan, doesn't it?" Su Qingyan smiled faintly and caught the bamboo, then nodded noncommittally. She pointed at the bamboo table and gestured for him to sit. The young man's expression was still cold and arrogant. He clasped his hands behind his back, walked up to the table, and sat down. "What business do you have with me? Empress of the Foxes, you should know that my Shao family has never been on good terms with the Yao realm. Although we don't have any enmity with you foxes at a time like this, as the Shao family's new Thunder Emperor, it's inevitable that people will gossip about me if I stay here for too long." The young man before her was none other than the Shao family's new Thunder Emperor, Shao Yan. After all these years of tempering, he'd gradually shed his former indecisiveness. His imposing aura now resembled that of the Shao family's Thunder Emperor. "Naturally, I called you here because I have something to say." In the face of Shao Yan's intense gaze, Su Qingyan simply smiled. Her smile was as alluring as a snow lotus blooming for the first time, causing all flowers to dim in comparison. However, Shao Yan wasn't affected in the slightest. He knew full well. The female empress of the Fox clan was indeed a delicate and beautiful flower. However, this flower's beauty was dyed in blood. Shao Yan coldly ignored her smile and narrowed his eyes. "In that case, let's just say it. Our Shao family still has a lot of official matters to deal with, so we can't chat with the Empress for too long. I know your Shao family is busy. You're in control of the lightning tribulation of all races. Naturally, a small clan like the Fox clan can't compare to you. But Emperor Shao Yan, your Shao family will soon be even busier." "What do you mean?" Shao Yan frowned. "You can at least have an hour, right? Please don't be impatient. After an hour, even if I let you go, you might not want to go for a while." Shao Yan could naturally tell that Su Qingyan was implying something. He squinted at the Empress for a long time, but didn't reject her. They just sat on the ground and didn't communicate with each other for an hour. When the time was up, Shao Yan immediately called out, "Empress." "Sure." He raised his finger and placed it on his lips. Then he saw a ray of white light piercing through the air. It was Su Wan, who had been sent out. Beside her was a pale-faced Xiao Hu. "Sister." Su Wan walked straight to Su Qingyan's side. At that moment, Xiao Yan saw Xiao Hu. "Xiao Hu, why are you here at the Fox clan?" "Clan head." Xiao Hu's eyes widened. Xiao Ting's attack had heavily injured him. He clutched his chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Su Qingyan furrowed her brows. She tossed a handkerchief into the air and caught the blood. Not a single drop fell to the ground. "We can't afford to see blood here." "Wanner, didn't you treat his wounds before coming here?" "I gave him a healing pill, but it doesn't seem to have any effect. Thankfully, his life is hanging by a thread. As for whether or not he'll live, let the Shao family save him themselves." "What does this have to do with the Fox clan?" said Su Wan. When he saw Xiao Hu's injuries, Shao Yan thought the Fox clan had done it. But now that he heard it, it seemed things weren't as he'd imagined. Xiao Yan took a healing pill from his spatial ring and stuffed it into Xiao Hu's mouth. Then, he used his divine power to guide the pill. Another 15 minutes passed. Xiao Hu's pale face flushed red. Xiao Yan furrowed his brows and said, "Xiao Hu, what on earth is going on? Didn't you just tell me the old emperor was looking for you? From the looks of it, your injuries were caused by a lightning attribute cultivation technique." Xiao Hu gnashed his teeth. He wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Then he clenched his fists tightly. It was the old emperor. Xiao Yan's pupils constricted, and his eyes filled with shock. Su Qingyan shot Su Wan a meaningful glance. Immediately, Su Wan said, "Don't worry." Then, Su Wan said, "Your family's old emperor joined forces with demons and a few Yao traitors. Back then, your old emperor tried to kill him. If I hadn't gone to save him, impossible." Xiao Yan glared at her and berated her. Su Wan smiled and said nothing else. Then, Xiao Yan grabbed Xiao Hu by the shoulder. "Tell me, what on earth happened? Why did the old emperor hurt you? Tell me." "Family head Su, I'm telling the truth. Not only that, but the old emperor also told the demon emperor and the others about what I discovered in the outside, as well as the Xiao family secrets. Family head, the old emperor, might really have betrayed us." With that, Xiao Hu buried his head in his hands. Xiao Yan, who was holding on to Xiao Hu's shoulder, felt his legs go weak, and he stumbled back a step. He kept swallowing his saliva as Su Wan and Xiao Hu's words kept echoing in his mind. His father really had joined forces with the demons. During the past 100 years, Xiao Ting's behavior had become particularly strange. Xiao Yan had privately investigated the identity of the person who'd always appeared by Xiao Ting's side. At the time, he'd come to the conclusion that it was a demon. He'd gone to talk to Xiao Ting, but all he'd gotten in return was a torrent of abuse. Xiao Ting had even warned him to just mind his own business. Until now, Xiao had been gravely injured, and he'd given a definite answer. Xiao Yan could choose not to believe the words of the Fox clansman. But Xiao Hu, who'd spent his entire life serving the Xiao family and had long since given his life to them, had no choice but to believe him. How could this be? Xiao Yan couldn't believe it. Little did he know, Xiao Hu felt the same way. He'd never forget Xiao Ting's decisiveness when he tried to kill him. Xiao Ting's lightning-covered hand had come crashing down on him without the slightest hesitation. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out why the old emperor had become like that. If Su Wan hadn't arrived so suddenly, he might have already died in the river Styx. Never mind Xiao Yan. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, heard the conversation between the old emperor and the demons, and revealed every secret of the Xiao family, he wouldn't have believed it. He wouldn't have believed it either. You shouldn't just hang around here. Hurry back to the clan and take a look. Once you've taken care of the Xiao family's affairs, the Fox clan will always welcome you back. Su Qingyan's lips curled into a faint smile. At that moment, Xiao Yan took out a jade slip. Chapter 1338. Dethronement. It seems the news has arrived. Am I right? When she saw Xiao Yan's expression change, a smile tugged at Su Qingyan's lips. A piece of jade bamboo appeared in her palm. Then I'll be a good person to the end. I'll send you back. The bamboo landed on the ground. Instantly, a forest of jade bamboo sprouted beneath Xiao Yan and Xiao Hu's feet. The bamboo grew wildly, piercing through the void. The two of them rode the bamboo and disappeared from the Fox clan. After disappearing, a sharp glint flashed through Su Qingyan's eyes. Send people to the Central Divine Mountain to secretly protect Lu Mei and Lilian. Already sent them a few days ago, said Su Wan, nodding. I've also sent people to pick up Su Zhu. That's for the best. Su Qingyan nodded, then narrowed her eyes. Open the Fox clan's gates. From now on, we'll welcome anyone who wishes to visit our clan. With that, Su Qingyan lost her usual gentleness. Her eyes turned fiery red, and her 9 flaming tails swayed gently. Clan head, we're here. Riding Su Qingyan's bamboo, Xiao Yan and Xiao Hu passed through the air above the Central Divine Mountain in the blink of an eye. They landed firmly on the ground. As they did, the bamboo forest transformed into a piece of jade bamboo and flew into Xiao Yan's hand. The Fox Empress truly is unfathomable. Just this move of hers was enough to suppress countless ruler rank experts. Xiao Yan clenched the bamboo tightly in his arms. When he thought of the Xiao family's current predicament, his brows narrowed. Return to the clan. Ever since the old emperor abdicated and passed his position to Xiao Yan, Xiao Ting had begun to live a leisurely life. He rarely interfered with the clan's affairs. Practically everyone in the clan believed the old emperor would relinquish his authority, but not long ago, he returned. Not only did he return, but he also summoned all of the clan's higher-ups, including the heads of the various subordinate clans. At the same time, he made an announcement. He removed Emperor Xiao Yin from his position as clan head. From now on, the Xiao family would be under his control. This sudden decision was the same as when Xiao Ting had passed his position to Xiao Yin all those years ago. There had been no warning at all. The clansmen present at the scene, as well as the vassal families of the Xiao family, who heard the news, found it hard to digest this sudden change. However, for those small families, it didn't matter who the patriarch was. As long as the Xiao family was still the Xiao family, the number one family below the God Emperor, the Lightning Emperor's family that controlled the lightning of all races, that was enough. However, it was different for the higher-ups or the larger clans attached to the Xiao family. A new ruler brings his own courtiers. Although Xiao Ting and Xiao Yin were father and son, and after Xiao Ting's abdication, Xiao Yin should have inherited everything he had, that wasn't the case. Xiao Ting and Xiao Yin were father and son. Their management policies and political views were absolutely at odds with each other. Not too long ago, the Xiao family had suffered a major setback. Back then, Xiao Ting had chased the Xiao family's eldest daughter out of the family. Back then, many other families had supported her, but Xiao Yin and the eldest daughter of the Xiao family were very close. After he took office, the first thing he did was to deal with those who hit him when he was down. He had greatly reduced the influence of those people, and in the past 100 years, he had replaced those positions with his own trusted aides. Some clans were once Xiao Ting's favorites, while others were Xiao Yan's. A change in the family head would directly affect the influence of their clans and individuals. Furthermore, many of the clans that had once supported Xiao Ting for the sake of their clan's future development had deliberately aligned themselves with Xiao Yan. As a result, they defended quite a few stewards and members of other clans. As a result, as soon as the news spread, some of the clans that had supported Xiao Yin contacted him. They wanted him to make an appearance as soon as possible. No matter what the result was, they needed him to be present. However, due to the recent suppression, those who had once supported Xiao Ting had already stepped forward. It seemed as if the position of family head would really be reclaimed by Xiao Ting. "All of you, get out of my way!" With an angry shout, a path appeared in the Xiao clan's bustling meeting hall. Xiao, who stood by Xiao Yan's side, accompanied by a youth carrying an ancient tome. They walked into the center of the hall from outside. Xiao Ting was currently sitting in the family head's seat, giving orders to the clan. When he saw Xiao Yin approach, especially Xiao Hu, his gaze clearly froze. Xiao Yin saw this, and it confirmed what he'd heard in the Fox clan. "Father, I never would have guessed you'd really betray us." Xiao Yin took a deep breath, then lowered his head. What he just said was just a whisper to himself. He couldn't possibly reveal it in front of so many people. As his son, he didn't want Xiao Yin to bear the infamy of being a traitor in his later years. He also didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble at a time like this. It would be best if he could resolve this matter while reducing the attention to the minimum. His eyes flashed with regret and pain. As everyone watched, Xiao Yin slowly walked up to Xiao Ting and bowed deeply. "Father, you're here." Xiao Ting had been an emperor for half his life, so it went without saying that he'd held a lofty position for so long. That indifferent glance was enough to make people feel a strong sense of oppression. Xiao Yan's meticulous greeting made the onlookers vaguely sense the hostility between father and son. "It seems you've done well as an emperor for 100 years. At the very least, you've raised a group of loyal subordinates. As a father, I'm very gratified. Before, I thought you weren't cut out for this job. I even regretted how I'd given birth to a son like you. Now, it seems you've done well." In the past, Xiao Yin would have beamed with delight if he received such praise from Xiao Ting. But at this moment, there was only indifference on his face. "Not bad. You've really improved a lot," said Xiao Ting, nodding. "Since you're back, you must know everything. I know you've worked hard to manage the Xiao family for 100 years, but from now on, you're no longer the head of the family. You've been deposed. Hand over the family head's golden seal." His tone was indifferent, but there was no room for doubt. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ting glanced meaningfully at the people around him and waved his hand. Immediately, Two elders of the Xiao family stepped forward and extended their hands. Xiao Ting, seated in the family head seat, gently rapped the table, indicating for his son to obediently hand over the golden seal. Xiaoyan still didn't hand it over. Father and son just stared at each other. Everyone in the hall could sense the tension in the air. Xiao Ting smiled as they stared at each other. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to Xiao Hu. "Take down Xiao Hu." The onlookers didn't know what was going on, but the members of the discipline hall still stepped forward. "Who dares?" Xiao Yan, who'd been silent all this time, roared. He glared viciously at the members of the discipline hall, who were about to attack. Chapter 1339. Horizontal, vertical in outer space. As his voice fell, Han Nan's gaze turned sharp. His gaze was like a sharp blade that had been unsheathed, staring straight ahead, shaking people's souls. In particular, when he said steel, Yi Zichen could vaguely sense that the Third Era was about to unleash a storm of carnage. As long as there was a need to fight for it, no one would be stupid enough to obediently hand over their star fate. Especially that Gu Li. He was one of the two emperors chosen by heaven. Since he needed to steal celestial fate, he had to fight Gu Li. Yi Zichen and Gu Li were old rivals. Based on his understanding of Gu Li, Yi Zichen knew that Gu Li was definitely fully prepared and waiting for him to arrive. It was more likely that he was already preparing to take the initiative to attack him. As Yi Zichen muttered to himself, Han Nan didn't stop talking. The Third Era is coming to an end. When the time comes, we can take advantage of the chaos in the three realms to strike. What you need to do is to obtain all the celestial fate of the two emperors chosen by heaven. Not only that, but you also cannot let go of God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate. God Emperor Zhou Wu? Yi Zichen arched his brows. Transcendence requires complete Emperor celestial fate. Although God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate belongs to the five elements Great Emperor, it's still Emperor celestial fate. I can't determine if his celestial fate belongs to the celestial fate you've manifested this time, but it's better to nip it in the bud. His celestial fate must also be taken. Besides, this celestial fate doesn't belong to him in the first place. He's just a despicable person who's trying to steal the celestial fate. It was obvious that Han Nan had a very bad impression of people who tried to usurp the celestial fate. At first, he had been disdainful of his evaluation of Zhou Wu, but now he had labeled him as a vile person. How would Zhou Wu feel if he knew that a god emperor of a generation was being slandered behind his back? However, this was exactly what Yi Zichen wanted. He'd already been tainted by the five elements Great Emperor's karma, so he was bound to run into the God Emperor. If the outer realms interfered, then everything would become a lot clearer. Moreover, if they could take the God Emperor's celestial fate, they could avenge the five elements Great Emperor. But I have to remind you, seizing the fate of the stars is a long-term plan. It can't be accomplished overnight. We want to usurp their celestial fate, so they will definitely think of usurping yours. Yi Zichen's expression froze. He knew Han Nan was telling the truth. In such a situation, all living beings sought to transcend. However, Yi Zichen had always found it strange. Even with Gu Zichen's support and the help of countless nobles, he was only on par with Gu Li. What was going on with this guy? Could it be that there was an old monster standing behind him? Senior, I've disappointed you. Gu Li knelt on the ground, his head lowered. A soul floated in front of him. If you look closely, you'd see that this soul bore a 70% resemblance to Gu Li. The only difference between the two was that this person was considerably older than Gu Li. The elderly soul on the chair sighed in disappointment. His sunken eye sockets and protruding cheekbones showed that this old man was definitely not an upright person when he was alive. But when he looked at Gu Li, he simply sighed. His expression was as if he had accepted his fate, and he kept shaking his head. I told you not to get involved with Kuei Lin and the others. Why didn't you listen? Gu Li knelt on the ground and looked at the sorrowful old man. He gnashed his teeth. He could treat everyone with disdain, and he could show his most sinister and cunning side. But in front of this old man, he treated himself like a junior and treated him like a senior. He didn't want to see the old man sigh. Guli would feel pain if he sighed. Senior, and Lu is far too important to me. She's the woman I love the most. I can't just leave her be. I know. The old man sighed, but didn't seem to blame Guli too much. Perhaps this is our fate. I thought that by following you and leading the way, I could change your fate. I never would have guessed that Lu would still run into it. He seemed to understand Li's feelings. It was as if he'd done his best for her. 129,600,000 years is a reincarnation cycle. Everything that happened in this era will be completely replayed after that. I didn't believe it, but now I do. Senior, perhaps we really aren't fated to transcend. Everything was predestined long ago. From the day you met Lu, your fate was decided. Senior, cherish the time you have with Lu. With a deep sigh, the old man's soul drifted into the depths of the demon cavern. Guli knelt for another hour or so, then gnashed his teeth, bowed deeply, and left. Not long after he left, the old man's soul floated back out. He gently stroked the smooth walls. Back then, in order to avenge you, I handed over my celestial fate to someone else. In order to resurrect you, I snatched back the celestial fate I'd given him. He died. You didn't live. I died too. I became a sinner of the era's transcendence, but I couldn't accept it. I found me, but I made the same mistake again. Now, my only hope is that this stone wall won't leave behind your final words. As soon as this thought appeared in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness, it lingered. It was not impossible. Otherwise, how could Guli always have the upper hand? What's more, how could he know so much that Yi Zichen didn't? Yi Zichen asked himself. Although he couldn't compare to Einstein in terms of intelligence, he was still within the range of a normal person. There was no reason for Guli to know so much more than him. Everything was truly terrifying when one thought about it. It was highly likely that some old monster stood behind Guli, and that monster was at least on Gu Zichen's level. Could it be that the old man behind Guli was the same as Gu Zichen? He'd crossed over from a parallel dimension and found this Guli, but according to Gu Zichen, the people of his parallel world were all dead. Then vertically, Gu Zichen had traveled horizontally to find Yi Zichen. In that case, could he have traveled vertically to find Guli? After arriving in the outside, Yi Zichen saw that everything here was exactly the same as in the modern realm. The only difference was that the modern realm hadn't transcended. This was the outside, where everyone revered martial prowess. If the modern realm also transcended, would it become like the outer realm now? Moreover, he could see that the people here were no different from those in the modern realm. Their appearance, their temperament, the location of the buildings, the names of the streets. Uncle Han. As he considered this, Yi Zichen's expression grew unsightly. He stared at Han Nan, his eyes devoid of life. When Han Nan heard his voice, he arched his brows. What is it? I'd like to ask you a question. Speak. Chapter 1340. Golden bodyguard Pu Jingwan. When he asked this question, Han Nan's expression froze for a long time before he relaxed a little. Then he crossed his fingers, pressed his elbows against the table, and smiled. Why do you suddenly ask this question? In truth, Yi Zichen regretted asking this question. He was afraid that if Han Nan mentioned the possibility, his worldview would completely collapse. But he still had an unshakable thirst for knowledge. Furthermore, he'd already considered the worst possibility. I want to know. Under Yi Zichen's resolute gaze, Han Nan nodded in understanding. Reincarnation. Yi Zichen's scalp instantly went numb. His entire body trembled as if he'd contracted malaria. Han Nan laughed. Although we call it an era, it's actually just a cycle of reincarnation. The first master of the stars once calculated that everything in the world would reappear after 129,600,000 years. In other words, after 129,600,000 years, the same person will be in the same place, doing the same thing. The reappearance you speak of should be the reappearance of the outside's reincarnation cycle. Do you understand now? A new cycle of reincarnation. Yi Zichen pushed aside his chair and ran to the window. He took deep breaths and occasionally retched. When he heard this news, he felt as if someone had viciously squeezed his heart. He felt like it was about to explode. The pressure he felt instantly reached its peak. Yang Jian wanted to step forward, but Han Nan stopped him. Some things required Yi Zichen to accept. When he first found out, he might find it hard to believe, but Han Nan trusted that Yi Zichen would come out of it. As for why, he didn't want to tell him. After retching for a while, Yi Zichen's eyes were bloodshot as he supported himself against the window. The veins on his neck and forehead bulged. He clenched his fists and wiped his lips. I want to see your era's Minister of the Left. I'm sorry, but you can't see the Minister of the Left, at least not yet. Han Nan chuckled and shook his head. Then I want to know his name. I'm sorry. Han Nan was still smiling apologetically. Yi Zichen slammed his hands down on the table, then glared at Han Nan with bloodshot eyes. His entire body radiated a vicious aura. Yang Jian quickly grabbed him. At that moment, Yi Zichen smiled. Ha, ah. He seemed to be laughing and crying at the same time. He sat on the chair and looked up at the sky. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they did not fall. Please calm down. When the time is right, you will naturally be able to meet the Minister of the Left. Our main problem now is to help you obtain the celestial fate and transcend. Let your era, and our era as well. If I bring you along, wouldn't this world really be in chaos? Suddenly, a mocking smile flashed across Yi Zichen's lips, and his bloodshot eyes flashed with a strange light. Han Nan froze, but Yi Zichen's smile faded. It's fine. You guys do your own things, and we'll do ours. No one will hold anyone back. At that moment, it was as if Yi Zichen had become a completely different person. He leaned against the back of the chair, tilted his head, and tapped the table with his fingers. How are you going to help me? Although he sensed that Yi Zichen had changed so much that it was like he was a completely different person from before, now that they were on the right track, Han Nan put on a serious expression. Since your celestial fate cannot be usurped, we will absolutely guarantee your safety. Han Nan picked up the phone on his desk. Let him in. Not long after, the office door was pushed open, and a beautifully dressed woman walked in. It's her. When he saw the newcomers, Yang Jian froze momentarily. Yi Zichen arched his brows and patted his pockets. Pu Jingwan. It was none other than Pu Jingwan, who'd hit on Yi Zichen on the side of the road. She'd even left Yi Zichen her contact information. Handsome guy in ancient costume, we are really fated. Pu Jingwan walked in and smiled. She nodded slightly to Yang Jian, then walked over to her desk and pulled out a document from her pocket. Hello, I'm Pu Jingwan. Pu Jingwan put away her documents, then sat down at her desk and looked at Yi Zichen. Don't tell me the target of my mission this time is this handsome guy in ancient costume. It really is the will of the heavens. Yi Zichen's eyes flashed with indescribable light as he looked at Han Nan. When he sensed his gaze, Han Nan smiled bitterly. This is Miss Pu Jingwan. She's the bodyguard we've arranged for you. You're already acquainted with Yang Jian, so he'll stay by your side to ensure your safety. In the modern realm, Pu Jingwan was just a streamer. Yi Zichen hadn't felt her combat prowess to begin with. Handsome guy in ancient costume. Why are you looking at me like that? Take a good look at my document. I'm an ace bounty hunter. Ever since I debuted, I've accepted over 10,000 missions, and I've never made a single mistake. So long as I have enough bargaining chips, I'm invincible. This was quite a contrast to the modern realm's Pu Jingwan. Yi Zichen rubbed his nose. Can I switch out? Whenever he saw this Pu Jingwan, he couldn't help but think of the modern realm's Pu Jingwan. Yi Zichen felt strange asking her to protect him. No. Han Nan cut Yi Zichen off, then lowered his voice and said, I paid a fortune to find her for you. She's beautiful, has a good figure, and has a high cultivation. I followed Yang Jian's instructions and found her based on your preferences. If you want a refund, you'll have to pay me back. Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at Yang Jian. Isn't that good? Bro, don't be so picky, said Yang Jian. Pu Jingwan sighed, speechless. Suddenly, she pulled her collar down, put her hand on Yi Zichen's shoulder, and pressed her body against his. Handsome guy in ancient costume. Don't tell me you haven't taken a fancy to her. Yi Zichen's heart shuddered involuntarily when he saw a sea of white. He hadn't expected Pu Jingwan to be so sexy. How come he hadn't noticed her back in the modern realm? Ahem. Yi Zichen cleared his throat. Now wasn't the time to pay attention to such things, so he hurriedly looked away and nodded. All right, I'll keep her, but that's not enough. I need you to provide me with 20 rulers. I need them to establish a faction in the God realm. Sure. I need more resources. Sure. I want more. So long as you need it, the outside has it. We'll give it to you without limit. Even though Yi Zichen was demanding an exorbitant price, and even the God Emperor would feel like his life depended on it, Han Nin didn't so much as bat an eyelid. Chapter 1341. Departure. Yi Zichen left the office building. When he reached Han Nin's residence, all of Yi Zichen's conditions were met. Resources, manpower, including the outsider's special envoy medallion. He'd obtained them all. However, this endless satisfaction only increased the pressure on Yi Zichen's shoulders several times over. Transcendence. All he had to do was transcend before the end of the era. If he failed, then once the barrier the Master of the Stars left behind shattered, they'd be destroyed. The outsiders had staked their entire lives on Yi Zichen. At this point, they had no other choice. Even though Yi Zichen had received so many benefits, he didn't smile in the slightest. This burden weighed down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. After leaving the building, Yi Zichen stood motionless on the side of the street. The 20 rulers Han Nin had promised to send him stood around him. It's worth mentioning that Pu Jingwan had handpicked these rulers. They'd last at least 10 rounds against her. This gave Yi Zichen a first-hand understanding of Pu Jingwan's power. She didn't even need to use her domain to defeat most rulers. She wasn't just extraordinarily beautiful. Her strength was astonishing, too. Even Yang Jian gasped, then slyly whispered into Yi Zichen's ear, "You can't just touch her." Dozens of people surrounded Yi Zichen, protecting him in the middle. Passers-by naturally glanced in his direction. Just whose family's young master was this? He'd put on such a show. When they saw Pu Jingwan, quite a few men secretly clenched their fists. They glanced at the rulers behind Yi Zichen and thought to themselves, all the good cabbages go to the pigs. Handsome guy in ancient costumes, what exactly do? You even know an official? Pu Jingwan's eyes flashed with curiosity as she approached. As she neared, Yi Zichen caught a whiff of her alluring fragrance. This made it impossible for him to immerse himself in his own inner world. Just now, you demanded an exorbitant price, but that official didn't even bat an eyelid. Those officials are usually stingy, and when they give us the Bounty Association's bounty, they make all sorts of excuses. But this time, the reward was given to me by the officials, and it was quite a lot of money. Pu Jingwan looked like a money grubber. Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head inwardly. The difference was just too great. The Pu Jingwan of the modern realm wasn't nearly as greedy as this one. It seemed that although it was a reincarnation, apart from their appearances, their personalities were really not the same. Yi Zichen wasn't in a good mood, so he didn't say anything. He merely glanced at her, then ignored her. Pu Jingwan pursed her lips and looked him up and down. You're really aloof, but I like aloof people. Now that you're my employer, I should at least know your name, right? Yi Zichen, said Yi Zichen. This name is not bad. Pu Jingwan giggled and nodded, but she didn't say what was so good about him. It was clear that she was just being polite, so Yi Zichen didn't take it to heart. However, Pu Jingwan seemed to be trying to start a conversation. Aren't you going to ask for my name? In response, it wasn't just Yi Zichen. Even Yang Jian looked at her speechlessly. When she saw their gazes, Pu Jingwan rubbed her nose, then pursed her lips. She didn't want to invite a rebuff, so she changed the subject. So, where are we going now? Didn't you ask when you accepted the mission? Asked Yi Zichen. I really didn't ask. I just saw that they offered a lot of money, so I agreed right away. Besides, what mission could possibly be too difficult for me? So long as I'm paid, I can even kill the primordial beasts outside the barrier. Pu Jingwan patted her chest confidently. Yang Jian secretly glanced at her and gulped. Yi Zichen, on the other hand, smiled calmly. Are you sure? This question stunned Pu Jingwan. Her confident expression twisted into one of astonishment. You can't be serious, can you? You really are ruthless. You didn't even understand the mission before you agreed. Yi Zichen shook his head helplessly, then said nothing more. However, judging from Pu Jingwan's expression just now, this primordial beast from the Outlands truly was extraordinarily savage. If even she had such an expression on her face, if this beast were to attack his era, he had to transcend as soon as possible. Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Yang Jian. Only then did he realize that he was glancing at Pu Jingwan's breast out of the corner of his eye. Every now and then, his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Yi Zichen elbowed him in the ribs. Yang Jian came to his senses in a panic, then wiped the corners of his mouth. Let's go. Yi Zichen glared at him, but Yang Jian chuckled and nodded repeatedly. Let's go, let's go. A pebble fell from Yang Jian's hand and landed on the ground. Instantly, a medium-sized black hole appeared in the street. When she saw this, Pu Jingwan's expression froze. She stood trembling on the street. It can't be true, right? She glared at him, but the 20 rulers behind Yi Zichen had already entered the black hole. Are you going in or not? If you're not, then go back to whatever you were doing. With that, the two of them entered the black hole. Pu Jingwan remained on the street. She bit her lip and thought about how Yi Zichen hadn't reached the level of a diviner yet. If you dare go in, what am I afraid of? I don't believe that group of giant beasts can eat me. As she entered, the black hole above the street also disappeared. When the pedestrians saw this, they all stopped in their tracks. They put their hands to their chests, as if in prayer, then bowed deeply. Because they'd opened a black hole and left the safe zone. The only thing they could think of was to fight the beasts outside the quarantine zone. Did they all leave? Han Nan stood by the window and watched as Yi Zichen and the others left. At that moment, he heard a deep, mellow voice in the room. When he heard the voice, he turned around, saw the person sitting on his chair, and hurriedly bowed deeply. They're all gone. As long as they're gone, that's good. The person smiled calmly. Call Lin Shang and the others over. And Gu Li, bring him back as well. Tell him I'm not dead. Tell him to come back. I can use what little celestial fate we have left to help him reform his soul and body. I can even help him revive in Lu. Don't let him cause trouble outside. All right, but there's something I don't quite understand. Speak. Why didn't you help Yi Zichen open his celestial eye? He still has celestial fate, but he doesn't know how to use it. The time isn't right yet. The person smiled calmly. Go do what you have to do. Chapter 1342. They had to take it the Lightning Emperor's estate while the Central Divine Mountain operated as usual. Outsiders had no idea that the Lightning Emperor's Shao family was currently facing a serious internal schism. Xiaoyan held the family head's golden seal and wore his imperial robes. Lightning crackled around him. His gaze was oppressive as he stared at the restless people around him. If anyone dares touch me, I'll use my position as family head to expel them from the Lightning Emperor's clan. Under this intimidating aura, no one in the hall dared to act rashly. Although Xiao Ting had said he'd depose Xiao Yan as family head, 100 years was more than enough for Xiao Yan to establish enough influence in the hearts of these people. Xiao Yan's trusted subordinates used their divine senses to lock onto Xiao Ting's side. This was no longer a simple matter of who would become family head. Perhaps after today, the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family would undergo earth-shattering changes. Xiao Ting sat in the family head's seat, his expression dark as he watched everything unfold. After a long while, ha! Xiao Ting laughed heartily and nodded repeatedly. Everyone in the hall was drawn to his smile as well. The people on Xiao Yan's side were even more on guard. Although Xiao Ting had voluntarily retired, he was still the Xiao family's strongest expert. If he wanted to take action, all of them together might not be enough to stop him. Xiao Yan, your growth over the past 100 years has truly gratified me, praised Xiao Ting. Then he smiled calmly and pointed at the Great Hall. What are you doing? Are you trying to usurp the throne and rebel? You've been a family head for 100 years, and your wings have hardened. Are you trying to steal father's position? Xiao Yan's lips quivered. He still remembered Xiao Ting's teachings when he was young. The Xiao family was eternally loyal to the god race. They would be the god race's sharpest sword against Yao and demons. But now, Xiao Ting felt like a stranger to him. Not only was he allied with Yao and demons, but he also wanted to drag the entire Xiao family down with him. Father. His tone was almost begging, and his eyes flickered with confusion. Others might not understand the meaning behind Xiao Yan's words, but Xiao Ting did. It seems you already know. Did Xiao Hu tell you? Asked Xiao Ting coldly. These words were also true, and there was no room for discussion to prove that all of this was true. Xiao Yan's eyes flashed as he stood in the hall. He stared fixedly at Xiao Ting, his thick brows tightly knitted together. Why? Why is this happening? He didn't care about the position of family head at all. If Xiao Ting hadn't forced him to take it, he would have died. He didn't even think about the position of the head of the Xiao family. But now, he couldn't let the Xiao family fall into the hands of someone like Xiao Ting. He couldn't let the Xiao family's glory be destroyed by Xiao Ting's hands. He couldn't let his name be cursed for all eternity. Even now, he still hoped that Xiao Ting would realize his mistake and mend his ways. As long as he could turn back, Xiao Yin could pretend none of this had ever happened. Are you interrogating me? Hand over the clan leader's golden seal. Be obedient. From Xiao Ting's tone, it was clear he was threatening them. The entire hall was shrouded in a gloomy aura, so oppressive that no one dared to breathe. Xiao Yin gnashed his teeth and stared into Xiao Ting's eyes, his eyes filled with misery. In the end, he was completely disappointed. Impossible. He severed his final hopes for Xiao Ting, then chuckled and shook his head. You're old. Since you've abdicated and handed your position to me, there's no reason for me to return it. Under my leadership, the Xiao family's glory will still be limitless. Don't worry about the clan any longer. Go enjoy your life. He stared directly into Xiao Ting's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ting narrowed his eyes. Impudent. He raised his voice slightly. Xiao Yan, you need to know that everything you have was given to you by me. If you want to take it back, you could take it back at any time. What I gave you is yours. What I didn't give you, you stole it. Do you understand? Understood. Xiao Yan sighed. He glanced at the golden seal in his hand, then put it away in his ring. Immediately after, his entire aura rose by quite a bit, and he raised his head high. Then your child will definitely steal it today. Good, good, good. Xiao Ting, really did give birth to a good son. Xiao Ting seemed infuriated. His face was purplish red. He couldn't help but nod. As he looked at Xiao Yan, who refused to budge an inch, he said good 3 times in a row. Then he waved his hand. Take him down. Whoosh. The crowd instantly split into 3 groups. One group didn't know what was going on, or they wanted to remain neutral. The other 2 groups belonged to Xiao Yan and Xiao Ting. They stood in sharp opposition. From the looks of things, Xiao Ting's men seemed to have the upper hand. Those who stood on Xiao Ting's side were generally old members of the god race. Whether it was in terms of prestige or cultivation, they were far stronger than Xiao Yan, who'd only recently been groomed as his trusted aides. Xiao Yan's men were completely surrounded. They gripped their weapons and circulated their divine power as they stared at the crowd. That's great. It seems like these are the trusted subordinates that you've cultivated. They've all jumped out. That saves me the trouble of slowly investigating them in the future. Xiao Ting remained seated in the family head's throne, his eyes flashing with fierce lightning. With a rumble, 2 lightning dragons shot towards the palace doors, which slammed shut. The entire hall became pitch black, and the only thing that could be seen was the flickering lightning around him. Under the illumination of the lightning, his face appeared especially sinister. Xiao family members, he might command. Eliminate the rebels. Those who remained neutral were stunned when they saw this scene. When he saw Xiao Ting's terrifying face, he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Could it be that the Xiao family was about to spill rivers of blood? Creak. Just as Xiao Ting and Xiao Yan's men were about to attack, the tightly shut palace doors opened a crack. Blinding light shone into the palace through the crack. Beneath the blinding light, everyone saw a woman with a veil covering her face. However, because the light was too blinding, no one could clearly see who she was. After pushing through enough space for one person to pass through, the palace doors didn't open any further. The woman's back was against the light. She stepped through the crack and slowly made her way to the center of the palace. Everyone in the hall froze. Xiao Ting and the besieged Xiao Yin were shocked as well. Xiao Yin is your last son, yet you're still trying to kill him? Do you think you're worthy of your junior apprentice sister, Zhao Shiyu? You. Xiao Ting's hands inexplicably trembled as he gripped his chair. The veiled woman smiled calmly. Xiao Ting, you've really been a failure your entire life, but I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you. Beneath her veil, a hint of disdain flashed across the woman's face. She glanced at Xiao Yan. Chapter 1343. To find my man. In this state of mutual hostility, Xiao Yan's side was clearly at a disadvantage. Don't be fooled by the fact that they were surrounding Xiao Yan and opposing Xiao Ting's people. In fact, none of them had any confidence, especially when the palace doors were closed. They even doubted whether they could make it out alive. The veiled woman's appearance shattered the tense atmosphere. Her disdain for Xiao Ting and her demand to leave gave Xiao Yan's trusted aides a glimmer of hope. Although they did not know the identity of the veiled woman, they were already moving closer to her. During this time, no one dared to act rashly. The veiled woman looked calmly at Xiao Ting, who sat in the family head seat. It wasn't until Xiao Yan and the others had gathered around the veiled woman that she turned her head away. Without saying another word, he walked toward the gate of the palace unhurriedly. You want to leave? At this moment, an old man with a long white beard jumped out from the crowd. Although he looked old, his movements were not inferior to those of an upright man in his prime. He fiercely grabbed the veiled woman's shoulder with his dragon catcher hand, but before he could touch her shoulder, the entire palace stirred up a violent gust of wind with a bang. The old man was also sent flying several feet by the wave of air and crashed into the coiling dragon pillar in the palace. A look of shock appeared on the face of the person in the hall. The old man who had just attacked was a peak celestial being realm expert. However, the veiled woman did not stop at all. She still maintained the slowest pace. Vaguely, the people in the hall seemed to feel that she was deliberately walking so slowly. It was only 80 meters long, but it took the veiled woman about 10 minutes to walk. Because of her thunderous methods just now, no one rashly tried to stop her. When they reached the palace's doors, Xiao Yan's trusted aides hurriedly pushed them open and escorted him out of the palace. But at this moment, the veiled woman stopped in front of the door. Are you sure you won't let us go just like that? She didn't turn around. Instead, she spoke with her back to the people in the hall. But you have to think this through. Once you walk out of this palace, you won't have another chance. This is your last chance. Are you sure you don't want to fight for it? Everyone in the hall knew who she was talking to. When their gazes fell on Xiao Ting, they saw that his hands were still trembling as he gripped his chair. His old, murky eyes flickered incessantly. It looked like he was struggling. The veiled woman in front of the palace didn't leave during this period of time. She just quietly waited until a long sigh came from within the palace. Under the veil, she revealed a disdainful smile and lifted her leg to cross the threshold of the hall. The wind whistled past. The gate of the palace was slowly closed by the howling wind. When the gate was closed, the veiled woman looked back at the palace. Only when there was a gap in the door did the veil on her face fall off. Many of the older generation in the hall couldn't help but narrow their eyes. Eldest Mississippi, when I wanted to take another look to confirm it, the door was already closed. Emperor, the clan head's golden seal, is still in that traitor Xiao Yan's hands. As the door closed, someone lit a fire in the walls, then furrowed his brows and pointed anxiously at the door. Now they remembered the clan head's golden seal. When Xiao Yan and the others retreated, they knew it was in his hands. However, none of them thought about leaving it behind. Xiao Ting didn't even glance at the man. The kneeling man felt as if he'd made a fool of himself. He awkwardly retreated to the side. Then the older generation spoke. Emperor, just now. That seemed to be the eldest Mississippi. The older generation nodded. They'd all seen her the moment the door closed. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yan's hands trembled even more. He hurriedly pulled out a bag of powder, poured it into his palm, and sucked in a few mouthfuls. Only then did his trembling ease a little. He exhaled comfortably. After a while, he seemed to have completely calmed down. He craned his neck and said, "It's just the clan head's golden seal. Don't tell me I'm not as good as the clan head's golden seal." Everyone bowed their heads. Xiao Ting looked at the old fogies with a warning gaze. In the future, no one is allowed to mention the eldest Mississippi. She died a long time ago. "Yes, sir." The kneeling elders trembled as they nodded. From this day forth, Xiao Yan's name is erased from the clan. As for those who left with him, their names are erased from the clan. Their vassal clans are no longer under the Xiao family's protection. "I'm a little tired. You're all dismissed." As Xiao Ting spoke, everyone in the hall kowtowed. Even Xiao Ting, who sat in the family head's seat, vanished without a trace. Eldest Mississippi, many of the people who were brought out by the veiled woman from the hall also recognized the veiled woman's identity. "It's me. I'm back." The veiled woman nodded and chuckled. The older generation all revealed gratified smiles. Xiao Yan furrowed his brows and walked out in a reproachful manner. "Big sister, why did you come? Do you know how dangerous it was just now? If I hadn't come, wouldn't my foolish little brother have died here?" The veiled woman smiled and patted Xiao Yan on the shoulder. Xiao Yan's face reddened. He didn't even dare look her in the eye. He stiffly turned his head away and stared at the tightly shut palace doors. What about the people inside? Who cares about them? Since they're willing to follow Xiao Ting, let them follow. The same goes for those who remain neutral. You don't need to try to rope them in. Even if you do, they'll just go with the flow if something happens, snorted the veiled woman. Xiao Yan thought about it. That made sense. Then what should we do now? Although Xiao Yan had been the head of the Xiao family for 100 years, he seemed to lose the ability to think in front of the veiled woman. He had to ask for her opinion on everything. In truth, he couldn't be blamed. This was a habit he developed since he was a child. "Before you came, didn't the foxes already seek you out?" asked the veiled woman. "Are we really going to work with the nine-tailed foxes?" asked Xiao Yan. "Why not?" The veiled woman pursed her lips into a smile. "What do you think?" When the others heard this, they couldn't help but freeze. Foxes, weren't they Yao? The Xiao family had always disliked other races. Of course, the younger generation was a bit better off, but the older generation was the strongest against them. But since they'd fought their way out with Xiao Yan, they were now in the same boat. Besides, they weren't particularly opposed to the foxes. "We can. The foxes have always been a neutral race. We've never had much of a grudge against the Xiao family. After splitting from the Xiao family, it'll be difficult for us to establish ourselves on the Divine Mountains. Not many people would dare take us in. Going to the foxes isn't a bad choice," said the elder in the crowd. The old man in the crowd spoke, and the others nodded in agreement. The Xiao family's power was truly terrifying. Now that they'd split from the Xiao family, aside from the Divine Mountains' holy lands, no one else would dare take them in. But the holy lands didn't lack people like them. If they took them in, they'd have to worry that they were spies sent by the Xiao family. Going to the foxes wasn't a bad choice. The veiled woman couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. "Who said we were going to live with the foxes? If we stay, we naturally have to stay on the Divine Mountains." Everyone was startled. They couldn't think of any place the gods could take them in. Immediately, the veiled woman smiled, and there was a blush on her face. Chapter 1344. The Void Outside the Void. Yi Zichen cut a sorry figure. He stared at the black hole behind him and thumped his chest, panting. It wasn't just him. Pu Jingwan, Yang Jian, and the 20 rulers Han Nan had sent weren't much better off. They all stared at the black hole in shock. The howling celestial dog's black fur was as messy as straw. It lay on the ground and rolled its eyes at Yang Jian. "Yang Jian." When Yi Zichen finally calmed down, he shouted angrily. Yang Jian walked over with a wry smile. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." When the rulers saw Yang Jian's apologetic expression, they wanted to get angry, but because of his status as a special envoy, they couldn't do anything. Pu Jingwan, on the other hand, had no such qualms. She sent him flying with a flying kick. The sudden attack sent Yang Jian flying 100 meters away. When Yi Zichen saw this, He hurriedly rushed over and grabbed Pu Jingwan, afraid she'd rip Yang Jian to shreds. Yi Zichen was furious, but he didn't want to see his bro die. Pu Jingwan glanced at Yi Zichen, then hatefully shook him off. Yang Jian smiled apologetically and flew back. As soon as he arrived, he heard Pu Jingwan hurl a torrent of curses at him. "I almost died in that black hole. Don't you know I'm not married yet? I'm such a beautiful young lady, yet I almost died in the spatial turbulence. I'm so sorry, so sorry." Yang Jian apologized profusely, as if he were praying to the Buddha. As for why this had happened, the time had to be traced back to an hour ago. Yi Zichen and the others had left the outside through the black hole. Their original destination was the God Realm's central divine mountain. However, on their way, the space within the black hole suddenly collapsed. Yi Zichen and the others were sucked into the spatial turbulence. Everyone was dumbfounded. Fortunately, there were quite a few hegemons caught up in the spatial turbulence, and Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan's realms were high enough to force them out of the spatial turbulence. "You scared me half to death." Pu Jingwan put her hands on her hips, ran her hands through her hair, and panted. Yang Jian smiled bitterly and apologized. He knew he couldn't blame her for getting angry. Yang Jian had set up the black hole. For a black hole of his level, a spatial collapse was the lowest level of error. And because of this mistake, more than 20 of them almost lost their lives. "All right, old Yang, don't blame yourself. Aren't we all fine now?" Yi Zichen couldn't bear to hear Yang Jian blame himself. He patted him on the shoulder, signaling him not to take it to heart. Then he looked at Pu Jingwan. "Don't be angry." Pu Jingwan suddenly threw herself at Yi Zichen, sobbing. "Handsome guy in ancient costume, you scare me to death." Yi Zichen had wanted to persuade her, but when he saw her like that, he knew that he was worrying for nothing. He forcefully pressed her head down and pushed her away, keeping a suitable distance between them. Pu Jingwan pouted as she was pushed away. Yi Zichen's gaze was solemn. "You'd better be careful. When you get to my place, you'd better keep a distance of 10 meters from me at all times. You're not allowed to act like a spoiled child in front of me, and you're not allowed to have any physical contact with me." "What? Do you have a girlfriend?" Pu Jingwan asked. "More than one," said Yang Jian mischievously. Yi Zichen really wanted to punch Yang Jian twice when he saw how annoying he was. Pu Jingwan nodded and laughed. "I understand. I'll do my best to control myself in the future. Our employer satisfaction is the highest honor for us bounty hunters. As a gold medal bounty hunter, I won't let my employer worry about me." She made this promise, but Yi Zichen didn't dare confirm whether she was telling the truth or not. Even so, he felt a bit more at ease now that she'd said it like that. Yi Zichen glanced at the empty space around him and said, "How far are we from my place? How far are we from my place? Do we need to build another black hole to get there?" It was necessary to jump through space between epochs. Even a peak sovereign realm expert would need to spend hundreds of years just to travel through space. The black hole had shattered, so he couldn't determine their exact location. That was why he'd asked this question. In truth, we'll be there soon enough. Just now, the black hole shattered because too many rulers went in. That's why it couldn't withstand the pressure and shattered. We're already outside your era. If we fly, it'll probably take half a day. If it's a black hole, let's fly. Pu Jingwan raised her hand. She was a bit scared. If they ran into spatial turbulence again, she really wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, she'd learned a few things. Although they'd left through the black hole, they weren't going outside the quarantine zone. From the sound of it, they were going to another era. She was happy to do this. In all her life, she'd never gone outside the first era before. This time, not only would she earn money, but she'd also get to travel at public expense. She'd really made a killing. We think flying isn't a bad idea either. The rulers raised their hands as well. Even a howling celestial dog barked a few times. Yang Jian placed his last hope on Yi Zichen. Let's fly, bro. I'm not doubting your ability. Look, the minority has to obey the majority. We have to be more democratic, don't you think? Yi Zichen gave him a reassuring look, then patted him on the shoulder. What else could Yang Jian say now that he had said it like this? He'd definitely lost face. If he wanted to get it back, he'd have to wait for the next time. He just didn't know if there'd be a next time. These people were all traumatized. Yang Jian had been to the third era before, so he knew its exact location. He led the way, while Yi Zichen and the others followed behind. From the third era to the first era, this round trip took nearly a month. Yi Zichen had no idea what the situation was like in the third era. When he left, the three great emperors had appeared, and given the ambiguous relationship between the upper three realms, they couldn't just start fighting, could they? Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself. That's quite possible. Who knew? The demon emperor might have used the deaths of the demon generals and demon gods as an excuse to point the finger at Zhou Wu. The Yao might have taken advantage of the chaos to attack. Didn't that mean the third era was in chaos? Oh well, Yang, can we hurry back? Before he could finish his sentence, Yang Jian, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. It wasn't just him. The 20 rulers stopped as well, and Pu Jingwan walked right up to Yi Zichen. What is it? There's movement up ahead. Yang Jian narrowed his eyes. Pu Jingwan knit her brows. The newcomer's cultivation isn't low. When Yi Zichen heard that, his heart trembled. The next moment, he saw a frantic young woman. When she saw them, she immediately ran towards them. She shouted,